What if the most sacred relic in Judeo-Christian tradition, the Ark of the Covenant, was not simply a chest of wood and gold, but a device of impossible origin, an alien machine cloaked in divine mystery? Imagine the accounts in the Bible not as metaphor or myth, but as the fragmented memories of a civilization trying to describe advanced technology without the words to capture it. When the Israelites spoke of the Ark radiating power, of priests collapsing dead when they touched it, of divine fire striking from its surface, were they recording visions of God, or encounters with forces they could not understand? The line between miracle and mechanism blurs, and in that blur lies the chilling possibility that the Ark's power was real, measurable, and deadly. Consider first how the Ark is described in Exodus. A chest of acacia wood overlaid with gold, topped with 2 golden cherubim whose wings formed a seat, the mercy seat. Between those wings, it was said, the voice of God spoke to Moses. But what kind of voice emerges from an object? Could it have been sound produced by resonant frequencies amplified by some energy source within? Some scholars have speculated the Ark was a kind of capacitor, storing and discharging energy. But if it was more than a mere capacitor, if it truly radiated power, then perhaps those who carried it were unwitting custodians of something not of this world. Radiation is invisible, silent, and deadly. In our modern age, we know of gamma rays, X-rays, ultraviolet waves, forms of energy that damage living tissue, disrupt DNA, burn the skin, and cause sickness without fire or blade. Now recall how the Ark was said to strike down those who approached without permission, how touching it led to instant death. One infamous account describes Uzzah, who reached out to steady the Ark as it shook, only to be struck dead instantly. Why would a wooden chest kill a man for so small a gesture, unless contact released something fatal? To us, the description sounds eerily like a sudden discharge of high-voltage energy, or exposure to lethal radiation. The Levite priests were instructed to carry the Ark using poles, never touching it directly. Why such precision, unless the ancients already knew by experience that human contact was fatal? Why command that only certain people approach it, and only after ritual purification, unless the rituals masked an unspoken truth, that proximity itself was dangerous, that contamination spread invisibly, and that without protective measures, the Ark would claim lives? Radiation sickness in antiquity would be described as divine wrath. The lesions, the weakness, the sudden death, there was no other framework to understand it. Look deeper into the descriptions. When the Ark was carried into battle, enemies fell, confusion spread, and victory followed. How could a box ensure triumph unless it emitted something beyond the natural? What if it released low-frequency infrasound, enough to disorient troops, or bursts of energy like directed radiation, weakening or terrifying those in its path? The biblical account of Jericho describes priests carrying the Ark around the city for 7 days, blowing trumpets until the walls fell. To modern ears, it sounds like myth. Yet, what if sound, vibration, and radiation combined in ways the Israelites could not explain? Could an advanced device weaken structures, disrupt minds, and tilt the tide of war? The Ark was also said to emit light and fire. When resting in the tabernacle, a cloud of glory filled the space. When Moses approached, his face shone so brightly he had to cover it with a veil. Radiation burns caused skin to redden, to peel, to glow with a sickly appearance. Was Moses suffering the effects of repeated exposure? Ancient scribes, unable to describe ionizing rays, wrote instead of divine glory. To them, it was holiness. To us, it might be radiation poisoning. There are stranger details still. The Philistines once captured the Ark, placing it in the temple of Dagon. Their idol fell face down before it, broken upon the ground. The people were struck with tumors, and many died. Tumors, an uncanny word defined in Scripture, are exactly the kind of symptom prolonged radiation causes. How could such a word have been preserved if it were not an observation of strange illness, misunderstood but undeniable? After only a short time, the Philistines returned the Ark to Israel, desperate to be rid of it. What they saw as divine punishment, we might see as radiation exposure. The Ark was shrouded in coverings when transported, hidden from the eyes of the people. Why hide a sacred object from view? Perhaps to protect bystanders from radiation, much as lead shielding today protects us from nuclear material. Even the mercy seat, the golden cover, might have functioned not only as a symbolic throne, but as a protective shield. Gold, after all, is one of the most effective blockers of radiation, its density able to absorb harmful rays. Did the builders of the Ark follow alien instructions, crafting not only a symbol of covenant, but a containment vessel for something too dangerous to leave exposed? Imagine the Israelites, a nomadic people in the desert, carrying what was essentially a reactor or transmitter of unknown origin. To them, it was the tangible dwelling place of their God. To us, it looks eerily like a dangerous machine, built with purpose, emitting energy that preserved, guided, and terrified. The rituals surrounding it, purification, distance, coverings, special garments, become not only religious acts, but protective protocols, rules passed down to keep a community safe from forces they could neither name nor fully resist. Even the glory of the Ark, when it led the way, has parallels in modern science. Plasma discharges, electrical arcs, radiation-induced luminescence, these could appear as glowing clouds, shimmering veils of light, audible rumbles. Ancient writers, confronted with these phenomena, spoke of God's glory, of divine presence. Today we would see ionization of air, corona discharges, radiation-induced phenomena. The language has changed, but the awe remains the same. If the Ark was alien technology, what was its purpose? Was it a power source, a transmitter, a weapon, or a device of communication? Did it connect its carriers to another realm, or to beings beyond Earth? The Bible describes God speaking from between the cherubim, a localized voice, precise, emerging from the space above the lid. Was this advanced audio projection a directed energy communication? To the ancients, it was the voice of God himself. To us, it might be the focus beam of an unknown machine. The mysteries deepen when we consider that the Ark eventually vanished, carried, hidden, or lost. Its location became one of history's greatest riddles. If it were merely wood and gold, why would it radiate deadly power, collapse walls, cause tumors, glow with fire? If it were a symbolic chest, why would those who touched it perish instantly? These questions linger like shadows across millennia, inviting us to reconsider not only what the Ark was, but what forces guided ancient history. But imagine further the psychological effects of such an object. To a people wandering the desert, struggling against enemies and famine, the Ark represented not just power, but security. The fear it inspired was as valuable as the miracles attributed to it. When enemies heard the Ark was coming, dread alone might have weakened them. And if the Ark truly radiated energy, its glow, its strange sounds, its power to kill instantly, these would be irrefutable demonstrations of divine favor. The Israelites carried not just a relic, but a psychological weapon, one that terrified allies and enemies alike. There is a chilling parallel with modern nuclear weapons. The first witnesses of the atomic bomb's light described it as brighter than the sun, a terrible glory filling the sky. Survivors of Hiroshima and Nagasaki bore burns, radiation sickness, tumors. To an ancient observer, such phenomena would be indistinguishable from divine wrath. Could the Ark have been a contained fragment of similar power, a controlled, portable nuclear-like device, or something even stranger, perhaps designed to last millennia? Another striking element is how access to the Ark was restricted. Only the high priest could enter the Holy of Holies only once a year, and only with ritual sacrifice and cleansing. Why? Perhaps because the exposure limit had to be tightly controlled. One brief moment, shielded by garments, could be survivable. Longer exposure might mean burns, lesions, death. And so, religious law preserved what we now call radiation safety, but wrapped in sacred command. Consider also the stories of its guidance, a pillar of cloud by day, a pillar of fire by night. Perhaps emissions visible in the atmosphere, like ionized particles glowing. Or perhaps even a projection device, casting light into the desert sky. The Ark was not static. It was active, dynamic, responsive. It was a presence, not an object, and the language of Scripture, poetic yet trembling with fear, encodes what could be the awe of standing near something beyond understanding. And yet, if this was alien technology, where did it come from? Was it given or was it found? Did Moses encounter it on Sinai, delivered by the very beings described as God's messengers? Did it descend with fire and smoke, lightning striking the mountaintop, as the text describes? Those same images match what we know of crafts entering the atmosphere. Plumes, thunder, flame. Was the covenant not only moral, but technological? A pact sealed with a machine, a gift or burden meant to shape a nation? The Ark's eventual disappearance may not have been an accident. Perhaps it was retrieved by those who gave it, taken when humanity was no longer meant to wield it. Or perhaps it was buried, sealed away to prevent catastrophe. If it were radioactive, time itself would be its greatest enemy. Without maintenance, shielding could fail, power could leak, dangers could escalate. Did the priests of Israel, realizing the danger, hide it away forever? Did Ethiopia's claim of its guardianship preserve not just a relic, but a dangerous inheritance? What is most unsettling is this. If the Ark was alien technology, then biblical descriptions of radiation and strange powers are not exaggerations. They are eyewitness accounts. They are the voices of shepherds, prophets, and kings who stood before a machine they could not comprehend, who trembled before the hum of energy and the glow of an otherworldly fire, and who called it God. But perhaps the greatest mystery is not the Ark itself, but the way humanity remembers it. Across generations, the stories were preserved, not as technical manuals, but as sacred texts. The Israelites did not say, "This is a reactor, a transmitter, a source of radiation." They said, "This is where God dwells." Their words reveal not ignorance, but reverence, the understanding that whatever its origin, the Ark was not theirs to master. It was power beyond human grasp, and power always demands humility. Think of the priests who entered trembling, bells sewn onto their garments so that others outside might hear them move, a rope tied to their waist in case they fell dead within the Holy of Holies. Such details sound theatrical, but they make chilling sense if the Ark could kill in silence. How many times did those waiting outside hear the bells stop, pull the rope, and find another priest lifeless? How many deaths were written as warnings into ritual law? We cannot know, but the echoes of fear run deep. And what of the people gathered outside, listening as thunder rolled and light glowed from within the tabernacle? To them, it was divine majesty. To us, it could be radiation storms, arcs of plasma, unseen waves that warped the air. Both views are true, for both describe the same mystery from different sides of time. Science explains the how, faith explains the why. And in the Ark, perhaps, both met in a single object. If the Ark was alien, its purpose may never be clear. Was it a gift to guide, or a test to see if humanity could bear such responsibility? Was it a fragment of some larger device, cut off from its origin, surviving as myth? Or was it simply abandoned technology, left like a spark in the desert, shaping a nation and echoing into scripture? In every case, its impact is undeniable. It carved law, inspired wars, dictated rituals, and gave rise to one of the most enduring legacies of human faith. And maybe that is the true power of the Ark. Not only what it was, but what it became in the minds of millions. A box of wood and gold that carried terror and awe, a chest that glowed with fire and voice, a relic that may have poisoned, burned, and killed, and yet was remembered as holy, untouchable, divine. In that paradox lies the enduring allure, a machine mistaken for a miracle remembered as a covenant. We are left with silence. The Ark is gone, hidden, destroyed, or taken. Its fire no longer burns before our eyes. But in the words of ancient witnesses, we catch glimpses of something that does not belong to their time, nor to ours. And as long as the stories remain, the question lingers like radiation itself, unseen, unfelt, but impossible to dismiss. What if the Ark of the Covenant was never of this earth? And if so, what does that mean for us, still searching for the line between God and the stars? What if the Ark of the Covenant was not only remembered in Hebrew scripture, but preserved in fragments of blueprint and memory across the landscapes of Africa and Egypt? Imagine this. The relic is gone, hidden, yet the whisper of its design lingers in cultures who claim to have once seen it, carried it, or guarded it. Ethiopia, with its ancient monasteries and cryptic legends, and Egypt, with its monuments etched in stone, both hold pieces of a puzzle too strange to dismiss. What if these fragments are not myth, but technical memory, preserved in the only forms the ancients knew: epic, ritual, and architecture? Ethiopia has long claimed the Ark rests in Aksum, in the chapel of the tablet at the Church of Our Lady Mary of Zion. Monks there insist that the Ark has been guarded for centuries, never seen by outsiders, hidden behind curtains, protected by a single guardian who dedicates his life to it. He cannot leave. He cannot marry. He cannot do anything but watch over it until death. Why such devotion to what outsiders dismiss as a box? And why is it said that those who even attempt to glimpse it are struck blind or fall ill, as though the Ark still burns with invisible fire? But Ethiopia holds more than legend. Its manuscripts, painted on parchment, often depict the Ark with geometric precision, with lines, measurements, and proportions that suggest not simply religious imagination, but technical memory. Some texts describe coverings, rings, poles, and the mercy seat with an engineer's clarity. What makes these records so compelling is that they were not copied from Western Bibles, but preserved in Ge'ez, the ancient Ethiopian script, passed down independently. If these details were inventions, why do they so closely match biblical accounts? And why do they linger in technical clarity rather than fade into metaphor? Egypt, too, is woven into the Ark's story. The Hebrews carried the Ark out of Egypt after centuries of bondage, yet Egyptian temples and tombs hold uncanny parallels to its design. Reliefs depict sacred boats borne on poles, golden shrines carried by priests. Some show boxes with winged figures, not unlike the cherubim atop the Ark. The Egyptians believed these were containers of divine presence, channels through which gods manifested their will. Were these depictions not symbolic, but derivative, imitations of a device once glimpsed in another people's hands? The blueprints lie not in ink alone, but in architecture. The dimensions of the Ark, given in cubits, align eerily with the proportions found in Egyptian temples. Golden coverings, sacred inner chambers, and the use of acacia wood mirror the materials and rituals of the Nile. Was the Ark an adaptation of Egyptian ritual furniture, or was Egyptian furniture an echo of the Ark? If the Ark was alien, perhaps it inspired both traditions, embedding itself into the cultural memory of two peoples, one enslaved, one imperial. Ethiopian texts go further still. Some legends say the Ark was brought to Ethiopia by Menelik, the son of Solomon and the Queen of Sheba. The Kebra Nagast, Ethiopia's great national epic, describes how Menelik stole the Ark and carried it south, accompanied by divine fire and angelic guidance. The text reads like history but also like blueprint, enumerating coverings, veils, and ceremonies of transport, as though the Ark required strict protocols for operation. These rituals resemble modern safety checklists for handling dangerous technology, reminding us that ancient people preserved function in the only language they had, ritual and law. Even more curious are the accounts of light and sound. Ethiopian tradition claims that the Ark emitted a hum, a voice, a vibration that filled the air around it. Egyptian hymns speak of shrines glowing with fire, surrounded by radiance, and priests trembling as they entered their presence. These details are not ornamental, they are phenomenological descriptions. The best words ancient scribes had for radiation, for electrical discharge, for infrasound. Imagine standing before a device humming with alien resonance, watching its glow burn the air, unable to explain it except as the presence of the divine. If these are indeed blueprints, they reveal something extraordinary. They reveal a shared human memory of an object that was not merely sacred, but operational. Ethiopia preserved it through guardianship and legend. Egypt etched it in stone and ritual. The Hebrews recorded it as covenant and commandment. And together, these fragments form a triangulation, a map of something that once stood among us. Was the Ark a relic of alien craft, entrusted to priests who barely understood it? Was it carried across deserts and temples not as treasure, but as burden? Skeptics argue that these parallels are coincidence. Boxes, shrines, and golden coverings are common symbols. Yet the recurrence of precise dimensions, coverings, prohibitions, and the language of danger suggests otherwise. Why should cultures separated by language and empire describe their holiest objects in such similar ways? Why should Ethiopian scribes insist the Ark cannot be seen without blindness, and Egyptian hymns describe priests shielded by veils of linen? These are not metaphors, they are warnings. Consider also the choice of materials: acacia wood, dense and durable; gold, pure and conductive; cherubim with wings outstretched, forming a void between them. In Ethiopian manuscripts, this space is always emphasized, the gap between the wings, the place where the divine voice emerges. What if that gap was not symbolic, but functional? A resonant chamber, a transmitter, a place where energy focused and projected outward. The Egyptians too carved winged figures flanking shrines, as though remembering a design seen long ago. The persistence of these details across millennia points to more than imagination. They point to memory. Blueprints not in the modern sense of ink on vellum, but in ritual, in architecture, in liturgy, in story. Ancient peoples did not design machines as we do, with diagrams and schematics. They encoded them in myth and rite, in proportions passed down, in sacred prohibitions. To see their blueprints, one must read their rituals. And when we do, the Ark emerges again, not as legend, but as machine. The Kibra Nagast, often dismissed by outsiders as mere legend, reads with a curious precision when examined closely. It does not simply state that Menelik carried the Ark to Ethiopia. It describes the process of its concealment, the fear of those who accompanied it, and the rituals instituted to protect it. In one passage, it speaks of the Ark shining with unbearable light, forcing those nearby to shield their eyes. In another, it describes the Ark as the throne of the world, the center from which divine law emanates. These are not poetic flourishes. They are the echoes of direct encounters with something powerful and dangerous. Ethiopian oral traditions are even stranger. Some speak of sounds that echo from the Ark, sounds like thunder that have no source. Others tell of birds falling dead when flying too close to the chapel that houses it. These may be embellishments, yet they echo the consistent theme. Proximity to the Ark brings danger. The monks who guard it do not think of it as symbolic. They treat it as active, volatile, and capable of destruction even now. That is not how one guards a relic of wood and gold. It is how one guards a reactor, a weapon, or a device of unknown power. Egyptian records also carry peculiar hints. The Book of the Dead, the pyramid texts, and the coffin texts describe objects called chests of fire and boats of radiance. Priests carried them into inner sanctuaries where only the initiated could enter. They were said to house the Ba, the soul, or even the Ka, the life force of the gods. These descriptions parallel the Ark's depiction as the dwelling place of Yahweh, where his presence would descend in fire and smoke. Were both cultures describing encounters with the same alien machine? Look at the temples themselves. The innermost sanctuaries hidden behind veils, accessible only to the highest priest, mirror almost perfectly the Hebrew Holy of Holies. The parallels are too strong to ignore. Both traditions guarded a central object, veiled from the people, surrounded by prohibitions, described as glowing, dangerous, and alive. If one were looking for the fingerprints of alien technology embedded in ritual, one could hardly find clearer evidence. And then there are the dimensions. The Ark is described as 2.5 cubits long, 1.5 wide, 1.5 high. These numbers are not arbitrary. They match ratios found in Egyptian shrines, tombs, and even in the geometry of the pyramids. Was there a shared template, a mathematical echo carried across cultures? Some researchers argue these numbers encode harmonics, frequencies of resonance that could enhance electromagnetic fields. If true, then the Ark's dimensions were not symbolic at all. They were functional. We must also consider the possibility that Egyptian depictions of winged figures flanking a central object are not cherubim by coincidence. They may be attempts to replicate a design first seen in the Ark, or in its prototypes. The wings may represent conductive arcs, channels for plasma, or symbolic memory of an energy field visible to the eye. In Ethiopian manuscripts, the space between the wings is always emphasized. In Egyptian iconography, the gods Ra and Horus are often shown between wings, showered in radiance. Could these be attempts to capture the same phenomenon? If these fragments are blueprints, then their survival into modern times is astonishing. Not in precise diagrams, but in a more ancient form of preservation, ritual, myth, and architecture. Ancient people did not draw wires and circuits. They encoded proportions, movements, coverings, and prohibitions. They passed down warnings not in technical manuals, but in commandments. Do not touch. Do not look. Do not enter without cleansing. These are not metaphors. They are safety instructions, preserved in the only language available. There is also the question of intent. If the Ark was alien, was it meant to be hidden in Ethiopia? Was it placed there as part of a covenant? Or was its movement southward an act of human theft, wresting technology from its intended keepers? The Kebra Nagast makes Menelik's act seem divinely sanctioned, yet one can also read it as rebellion, a son stealing fire from the father, like Prometheus taking flame from the gods. If the Ark truly rests in Axum, then perhaps humanity has been guarding stolen fire for 3,000 years. And Egypt may have tried to replicate what it saw, but could not truly control. The shrines, the gilded boxes, the sacred boats, these may be shadows, ritual imitations of something they once witnessed in another people's possession. They built golden chests, covered them in linen, processed them in ceremonies, but none glowed, none hummed, none killed. Their blueprints were copies without the spark. The real device remained elsewhere, hidden, still potent, still mysterious. When we place Ethiopian and Egyptian records side by side, a haunting picture emerges. Both cultures remembered something not of their own making. Ethiopia preserved it through guardianship, secrecy, and epic tales. Egypt preserved it through imitation, ritual, and architecture. Together, they are two halves of a broken map, two archives that testify, whether knowingly or not, to the existence of something beyond comprehension. Perhaps this is the true function of blueprints, not just to instruct in building, but to ensure memory survives, to leave behind fragments that point toward a whole, to encode across time and empire the story of a machine mistaken for the dwelling of gods. And when we read these fragments today, across Ge'ez manuscripts and hieroglyphic inscriptions, we glimpse not fantasy but continuity, the trace of alien design lingering in human memory, waiting for us to recognize it. What if one day the Ark is revealed again? What if the guardian of Axum steps aside, or if excavation uncovers a buried shrine along the Nile? Then we would see that these ancient blueprints were not exaggerations, but careful memories. We would see that Ethiopia and Egypt were not inventing symbols, but recording encounters. And perhaps we would realize that the covenant was not only spiritual, but technological, that humanity has always lived in the shadow of machines older than itself, machines mistaken for thrones of gods. What if the Ark of the Covenant was not only a vessel of divine presence, but a device, an engineered instrument designed to communicate with those the ancients called gods? Across the pages of Scripture, the Ark is described as the seat of God's voice, the place where revelation descended. But what if this was not metaphor, but literal function? What if the Ark was a transmitter, a receiver, a bridge between human and non-human intelligences? To the Israelites, it was the throne of Yahweh. To us, it may look uncannily like an artifact of communication technology. In Exodus, the voice of God is said to have spoken to Moses from between the cherubim. The phrasing is remarkably specific. It does not say the voice came from the sky or from within Moses' mind. It says it emerged from a physical location, the gap between the golden figures on the Ark's lid. That detail suggests not only symbolism, but technology. Today we have directional speakers, parabolic microphones, devices that project sound in focused beams. Imagine an advanced device that could create the impression of a voice localized to a small space, audible to those near, but imperceptible beyond. To Moses, it was God's voice. To us, it could be signal projection. The role of the Ark in Revelation cannot be overstated. The 10 Commandments, the laws of the covenant, the instructions for worship, all were delivered in proximity to it. Moses ascended Sinai amid thunder and fire, but he returned to the Ark to receive instruction, as though the Ark were a console through which commands were transmitted. Could it have been a communications relay, a node linking Earth to a network beyond? The ancients lacked words for transmission, signal, or frequency. They spoke instead of glory, presence, and the voice of God. Some scholars have noted that the Ark's dimensions, its golden overlay, and its acacia frame would make it an effective capacitor. Electrical energy stored within might not only discharge, but also amplify signals. Gold conducts, wood insulates, poles prevent direct contact. Was the Ark built as a resonant chamber, an antenna of sorts, designed to pick up and transmit frequencies not perceptible to the human ear? If so, the voice of God might have been an actual transmission, encoded in energy fields, interpreted by the consciousness of those prepared to hear it. There is also the matter of ritual. Priests purified themselves before approaching the Ark, dressed in specific garments, and performed elaborate ceremonies. To skeptics, these are empty rites, but to a technological eye, they resemble calibration protocols, procedures to ensure safe and accurate operation. If the Ark was a communication device, it may have required environmental control, careful preparation of operators, and strict guidelines to prevent corruption of signal or exposure to hazardous emissions. The Bible often speaks of God descending in a cloud to meet his people, his glory settling upon the Ark. Could this imagery describe more than vision? Clouds, fire, and thunder resemble descriptions of plasma discharges, electromagnetic disturbances, even atmospheric entry. What if these descents were manifestations of contact events, ships or beings arriving, connecting, interfacing with the Ark as their terrestrial node? To the ancients, this was theophany. To us, it might be visitation. The Ark was the docking station, the terminal. And what of the prophets? Samuel, a boy sleeping near the Ark, heard a voice call his name in the night. Was it the divine? Or was it a transmission, carried by the Ark, perceived directly in his consciousness? Many prophets received visions after time near the Ark or the tabernacle. Could the device have altered their neural activity, induced states of heightened perception, even facilitated telepathic connection? Advanced communication might bypass spoken words entirely, transmitting thought directly. Prophets may have been the receivers, the chosen minds most capable of interpretation. The idea grows stranger when we consider the parallels in other cultures. In Egypt, priests claimed to commune with gods through shrines that glowed and spoke. In Mesopotamia, the Anunnaki were said to descend upon temples to deliver decrees. In Ethiopia, the Ark was remembered not just as a relic, but as an active source of command, humming with presence. Were all these instances not myths, but records of contact facilitated through engineered devices? Was the Ark one among many, a portable interface between human beings and beings from beyond Earth? There are even clues in the prohibitions surrounding the Ark. No one but the high priest could enter its chamber. Why? Because untrained contact might have been overwhelming. Exposure to raw communication, to signals not intended for ordinary human minds. Only those initiated, prepared, and sanctified could withstand it. Today, we might say their brains had to be conditioned, their perception honed, to survive an altered state induced by alien technology. For others, contact might have meant madness, seizures, or sudden death. The Ark's role in battle also takes on new light. Not only did it terrify enemies with its deadly aura, but it may have broadcast signals that disoriented or manipulated. Imagine directed frequencies affecting emotion, inspiring fear in armies, giving courage to allies. The Ark may have been a psychological weapon as well as a communication device, transmitting not only messages from beyond, but signals that influenced minds on the battlefield. To call this divine favor was natural. But perhaps it was frequency warfare, millennia before radio. What then of the covenant itself? A covenant implies agreement, dialogue, a two-way relationship. The Ark was not simply a container, but the physical mediator of that agreement. If it was a device, then the covenant was not metaphor, but literal communication, a binding contract spoken through transmissions, carried in voices from between the cherubim. Humanity was not merely praying into silence, but receiving answers, encoded in strange powers, delivered through a golden box that served as transceiver. This raises unsettling questions. Who were the gods on the other side of the signal? Were they truly divine beings or advanced intelligences whose voices seemed like thunder to Bronze Age ears? If the Ark was a phone line to the heavens, who held the other receiver? Were we speaking with creators, with guardians, or with strangers who happened to pass by our world? Every covenant carries obligations. What obligations did humanity unknowingly enter when it listened to voices from the Ark? Consider the moment of silence when the Ark was lost, hidden, or taken. No longer did the voice speak from between the cherubim. No longer did prophets hear commands so directly. Was the channel severed? Did the gods stop speaking? Or did humanity lose the only device capable of hearing them? If so, then perhaps our long silence in the cosmos, our unanswered prayers, are not proof that no one is there. They may simply mean we misplaced the one instrument that connected us to them. Imagine finding such a device today. Imagine bringing the Ark into a lab, connecting instruments to measure its emissions, its fields, its resonant frequencies. Imagine discovering that it still transmits, still listens, still calls across the void. What would it hear now? What would answer? Would we discover that the gods of the ancient world are still speaking, waiting for someone to pick up a call made 3,000 years ago? Let us not forget the physical phenomena associated with the Ark during communication events. Ancient accounts speak of thunder, lightning, and a trembling of the ground whenever the Ark became active. These descriptions match what we now associate with electromagnetic surges, resonance effects, and atmospheric ionization. To ancient witnesses, these were signs of God's arrival. To us, they could be side effects of a device generating fields strong enough to pierce through dimensions of space, reaching out into the unknown. Moses himself may have been the Ark's greatest operator. His repeated encounters left him transformed. His face shone so brightly that he veiled himself. His body bore marks of proximity to strange power. Was this divine glory, or the lingering effect of communication with beings who use the Ark as their mouthpiece? What if his visions on Sinai, his commandments and instructions, were not dreams or hallucinations, but data received through a transmission system filtered through his human perception? If we imagine the Ark as a kind of radio or quantum communicator, then the priests around it served as both technicians and interpreters. The rituals of sacrifice, incense, and chant may have been ways to create resonance, to stabilize frequencies, or to prime the mind for altered states that allowed clearer reception. The smoke that filled the tabernacle might not only have been symbolic, it could have altered conductivity, served as a visible marker of the Ark's activation, or protected those nearby from harmful emissions. Other cultures hint at similar devices. The Sumerians spoke of the tablets of destiny, objects that connected kings to the decrees of the gods. The Hindus described the Brahmastra, weapons and tools that responded to mantras, spoken codes that activated alien mechanisms. The Mayans recorded encounters with shining beings who descended amid smoke and fire, leaving behind relics that sang when touched. Could these be cultural echoes of the same kind of communication devices scattered across the earth by beings we mistook for deities? And if so, why was the Ark unique in its endurance? Perhaps it was the most complete, the most functional, a relic that survived intact when others failed. Its portability made it even more significant. Unlike a temple or monument, it could be carried, hidden, brought to battlefields and mountains. This mobility meant the voice of the gods could travel, not bound to one city or shrine, but accompanying a people wherever they went. Such adaptability would make the Ark not only sacred, but strategic, a device of guidance and command. The silence that followed its disappearance is deafening. In the centuries after the Ark vanished, prophecy waned. The direct voice of God, once described so vividly, grew rare. Faith replaced dialogue, memory replaced presence. Was this simply the evolution of religion? Or was it the result of losing the one device that bridged two worlds? Without the Ark, humanity was alone again, left to interpret echoes and shadows without the clarity of direct contact. Imagine the implications if the Ark were rediscovered. It could change not only theology, but science. It would prove that communication with non-human intelligences was possible, that we were not merely praying into silence, but once were part of an ongoing dialogue. It would confirm that the gods of antiquity may have been beings beyond Earth, using technology to make themselves known. And it would force us to confront a chilling question. If they spoke once, why are they silent now? Perhaps the silence is not absence, but waiting. Perhaps the Ark was not only a receiver, but also a transmitter, designed to signal when humanity was ready. If we found it and activated it again, would the signal resume? Would we hear voices long dormant, calling across galaxies, across time itself? Would we recognize them as gods or as fellow travelers? And would we welcome their return or fear what kind of covenant they might seek this time? The Ark as a communication tool changes everything we think we know. It suggests that the laws, revelations, and visions of the Old Testament may have been transcripts of contact, messages sent through a device humanity could barely understand. It suggests that the most sacred covenant in human history may have been a dialogue, not with heaven as we imagine it, but with beings whose technology was indistinguishable from divinity. And it reminds us that perhaps we have always been part of a larger conversation, one that began long ago, in fire and smoke, with voices that spoke from between golden wings. For in the silence of the Ark's absence, we are left with yearning, The yearning of prophets who once heard voices, of nations who once carried fire, of priests who trembled before soundless commands. The ark may be gone, but the longing to connect, to reach across the void and hear an answering voice, remains embedded in the human soul. We build radios, satellites, telescopes, listening for signals in the cosmic dark. We are still repeating the ancient act of standing before a golden box, waiting for the voice to call our name once again. The Ark of the Covenant dominates the early chapters of biblical history with an almost theatrical brilliance, like a star burning too brightly to be ignored. It appears in Exodus as the centerpiece of divine instruction, in Joshua as the weapon that shatters Jericho, in Samuel as the terrifying power that slays the unworthy, and in Kings as the sacred treasure of the temple. But then, silence. A silence so sudden, so absolute that it feels deliberate. After centuries of presence, the Ark disappears from history as though erased. No description of its destruction, no lament for its loss, no explanation of its fate, only absence. This absence is not a casual omission, it is an erasure. Scripture that once described the Ark with obsessive detail stops mentioning it altogether. Rituals built around its presence are no longer explained. Wars once fought in its shadow are fought without it. The Psalms sing of God's throne between the cherubim, but the throne itself is never seen again. How could such a central object simply vanish? Unless something extraordinary happened. Something too dangerous, too shameful, or too incomprehensible to record. The last clear mention comes during the reign of King Josiah, when the Ark is briefly referenced in the temple. After that, history falls into darkness. The Babylonians came, destroyed the temple, carried off treasures to Babylon, but curiously, the Ark is never listed among the spoils. Gold, silver, vessels, and sacred objects are cataloged with care, but the Ark is conspicuously absent. Did the Babylonians not find it? Did someone hide it before their arrival? Or was it already gone, spirited away to a secret place, known only to a handful of guardians? Some believe it was hidden by the priests deep beneath the Temple Mount, sealed in a chamber designed to outlast centuries. Others say it was taken to Egypt by loyalists fleeing the Babylonian invasion. Still others insist it traveled south, carried to Ethiopia, where monks claim to guard it even now. Each theory offers fragments, whispers, legends, but none explains the silence that followed. The Ark did not simply vanish from sight, it vanished from memory, from Scripture itself, as though the writers knew it existed, but chose to speak no more of it. The mystery deepens when we recall how dangerous the Ark was said to be. If it was merely symbolic, why not mention its fate, its destruction, or its transfer? If it was inert, why not lament its loss in the same detail given to the temple or the city? Its absence suggests something else, that the Ark's disappearance was not only physical, but intentional. Perhaps it was too dangerous to describe. Perhaps those who knew where it went deliberately buried its story to protect future generations. Or perhaps its disappearance was not in human hands at all. The silence is itself a clue. When something so central is suddenly excluded, it is rarely by accident. Imagine scribes, aware of the Ark's power, choosing not to record it openly. Imagine priests, instructed to guard its location in secrecy, writing their scriptures with veiled references, embedding memory in allegory instead of fact. The disappearance from records may not mean the Ark was gone. It may mean the Ark had entered a new phase of existence, hidden, protected, excised from history to prevent catastrophe. Legends outside the Bible provide tantalizing hints. The second book of Maccabees claims the prophet Jeremiah, warned of Jerusalem's fall, carried the Ark to Mount Nebo and sealed it in a cave, declaring it would remain hidden until God gathered his people again. Ethiopian tradition insists Solomon's son Menelik took it long before, leaving a replica in the temple. Islamic traditions speak of a sacred chest carried in battle, still revered in ancient memory. Each version insists the Ark survived, but always hidden, always untouchable. There is also the possibility that the Ark's disappearance was not a matter of human hands. If it was alien technology, perhaps those who gave it reclaimed it. Perhaps the covenant ended not because Israel failed, but because the experiment was concluded. The voices stopped speaking, the power was withdrawn, and the device itself was retrieved, leaving humanity to grapple with silence. What better way to erase a presence than to ensure its absence could not be explained? A disappearance so complete that even history falters before it. The archaeological silence is equally profound. Temples unearthed, inscriptions recovered, chronicles preserved, none yield the Ark. Not in Babylon, not in Persia, not in Greece or Rome, no empire boasts of capturing it. No ruler claims it as a prize. This absence is inexplicable for an artifact of such renown. Ancient kings carved triumphs in stone, bragged of plundered treasures, yet none mention the Ark. It is as if it never existed at all, unless it was hidden by powers too great to challenge, or by design too strange to comprehend. Perhaps the Ark's disappearance is itself part of its design. A machine built not to endure forever, but to operate for a time and then vanish, leaving behind only memory. Perhaps it had a shutdown sequence, an expiration woven into its structure. Once the covenant was fulfilled or abandoned, the Ark ceased to function, and those who approached it found only a silent chest. Would they not then conceal the truth, unwilling to admit their God's throne had gone dark? Would they not veil the silence in secrecy? And yet the longing remains. Entire traditions grew around the absence, around the silence. Jews pray for the rebuilding of the temple where the Ark once rested. Christians speak of a new covenant, written not on stone tablets but in the heart. Ethiopians guard a relic unseen. Adventurers seek it across deserts, mountains, and ruins. The Ark's absence became more powerful than its presence. It became the ultimate mystery, the holy grail of relics, the empty throne that still commands reverence. Its disappearance is not weakness, it is the source of its immortality. Consider the Babylonian conquest once more. Their chronicles recorded the treasures looted from Jerusalem, listing goblets, basins, vessels of gold and silver. The Ark is conspicuously missing. Why would the Babylonians, who gloried in plunder, fail to mention the greatest treasure of all? One explanation is that it was hidden before they arrived. Another is that they found it, but dared not describe it because what they encountered was too strange, too terrifying, too unlike anything they could assimilate into their record of conquest. Later Jewish writings treat the Ark with silence, almost discomfort. The rebuilt temple, though glorious, lacked it. The Holy of Holies was empty. Sacrifices continued, rituals endured, yet the throne of God was gone. How does a faith survive the absence of its most sacred object? By transforming absence into presence, silence into longing. The missing Ark forced religion to turn inward, from object to idea, from box to covenant of spirit. Yet even in this transformation, the mystery of its disappearance haunted every prayer. Some believe the Ark was deliberately buried under the Temple Mount, in chambers so deep and so secret that even centuries of excavation would never find it. The Dead Sea Scrolls hint at treasures hidden by priests, though the Ark is not named. Templars in the Middle Ages scoured Jerusalem, convinced it remained beneath. What if they were right? What if deep under the stones of the Mount, guarded by tunnels and collapsed passageways, the Ark still waits, humming softly, its presence too dangerous to reveal? Others argue the Ark traveled to distant lands. Legends place it in Arabia, guarded by nomads who knew its danger. Some claim it was carried into Africa, where Ethiopia became its final home. Others whisper it journeyed by sea to southern lands, forgotten in time. Each story fills the silence with speculation, yet all agree on one point. The Ark did not simply vanish. It was moved, hidden, concealed, but never destroyed. For who could destroy such a thing, if it was not of this world? If the Ark was alien, its disappearance may have been orchestrated. Perhaps the beings who gave it reclaimed it, lifting it back into the sky as quietly as it first descended. Perhaps they allowed humanity to keep it for a time, to guide, to teach, to test, and then withdrew it once the covenant reached its end. The silence in Scripture would then be deliberate, for how could scribes describe the departure of God without unraveling the entire fabric of their faith? Better to leave the absence unspoken, better to let mystery fill the void. But what if it was not reclaimed? What if it was deactivated? Advanced technology, left without maintenance, may have failed. Radiation shields may have decayed, power sources exhausted. Perhaps priests saw the light fade, the voice fall silent, the fire extinguish. To confess that God's throne had gone dark would have been unthinkable. So they buried it, not only in earth but in silence, transforming technological failure into divine mystery. What remains is absence wrapped in awe. History is filled with deliberate erasures. Empires destroyed records of shameful defeats. Priests rewrote texts to hide forbidden knowledge. Why should the Ark be any different? If it was a device too dangerous, too unstable, or too revealing of truths humanity could not yet bear, then silence was the only refuge. The disappearance from records is not proof of loss. It is proof of control, of a decision to hide what could not be explained. What better way to guard a secret than to ensure it is never written down? The Ark's silence ripples through time. Crusaders sought it. Explorers searched for it. Scholars debated it. Filmmakers imagined it. Yet none found it because its very absence is its power. Like a vanished star, it draws the eye to the darkness where it once shone. Like a missing word in a sacred text, it demands interpretation. Humanity cannot forget what has been erased. We chase its shadow precisely because it is gone, and perhaps that was the intent. Perhaps the Ark was never meant to be kept forever. Perhaps it was a teacher, a messenger, a bridge, meant only for a time. When that time ended, it withdrew, leaving humanity with memory, with scripture, with longing. The silence is its final lesson, that presence is temporary, but mystery endures. And so, the Ark disappeared not to be forgotten, but to ensure it would never be forgotten. What would it mean if one day it returned? If tomorrow, unearthed from a cave or revealed from a vault, the Ark stood before us again? Would we recognize it or recoil in fear? Would it speak once more or remain silent? Would it prove the faith of millennia or shatter it by revealing not divinity but alien design? The disappearance ensures these questions remain unanswered, ensuring the Ark lives not in possession but in possibility. The mysterious disappearance of the Ark from historical records is not an accident. It is part of its story, perhaps the most important part. For what is more powerful? The presence of a device, or the echo of its absence across centuries? The Ark lives in that silence, in that longing, in the questions it leaves behind. And perhaps that is exactly what was intended. The Ark of the Covenant did not end with fire or conquest, at least not in the stories that survived. Instead, it slipped into silence, swallowed by mystery. And from that silence, one of the most enduring theories arose, that the Ark was hidden, deliberately stored in secret tunnels or caves, concealed from conquerors, preserved from time, waiting for a moment of revelation. The idea is not mere legend. It echoes across traditions, texts, and whispers that stretch from Jerusalem to the deserts of Jordan, from Ethiopia to Egypt. Humanity has always wondered, if the Ark was too holy to lose, then where was it hidden? The most famous account comes from the second book of Maccabees. There it is written that the prophet Jeremiah, warned of Jerusalem's destruction, took the Ark and carried it to Mount Nebo, the mountain where Moses once glimpsed the promised land. In a cave, Jeremiah sealed the Ark, declaring that it would remain hidden until God gathered his people once more. The cave became not a tomb, but a vault, a chamber holding both relic and promise. This story resonates because it offers not an ending, but a pause, as though the Ark is not gone, but simply waiting in shadow. Archaeologists have scoured Nebo, finding shrines, altars, and traces of ancient use, but no Ark. Yet the land itself is riddled with caves, each potentially the resting place of something forgotten. If the Ark rests there, it would not be alone. Across history, caves have been the chosen vaults for secrets too dangerous to expose. The Dead Sea Scrolls, hidden in jars and tucked into cliffs, survived untouched for 2,000 years. If fragile parchment could endure, how much more could a golden chest wrapped in mystery? Beneath Jerusalem itself, another labyrinth whispers of the Ark's concealment. The Temple Mount sits atop tunnels and chambers, some excavated, others sealed. Ancient writings speak of priests who built escape routes, hiding treasures in subterranean vaults when enemies approached. The Talmud describes secret chambers below the temple. Legends claim the Ark was lowered into one such vault before the Babylonians breached the city. To this day, parts of the underground remain unexplored, inaccessible for fear of collapse, or for fear of what may still lie hidden. Knights Templar who occupied Jerusalem in the 12th century were obsessed with these tunnels. Chronicles say they dug beneath the temple, searching for the Ark. Some believe they found it, spiriting it away to Europe, embedding it into the mythology of the Holy Grail. Others think they uncovered only emptiness, evidence that priests had moved it deeper still, beyond reach. The Templars' fascination is itself a clue. Why would hardened warriors and financiers spend years digging under sacred ground, unless they were convinced something extraordinary lay below. The theory of tunnels is not confined to Jerusalem. Ethiopia, too, claims the Ark rests in Axum, but even there the tradition acknowledges secrecy. Some say the Ark is not in the chapel where the guardian monk resides, but buried beneath it, in tunnels carved long ago. A surface guardian would then be only a sentinel for a deeper secret. Stories tell of underground chambers filled with copies, decoys to confuse invaders, with the true Ark buried where no hand may touch it. The idea that such tunnels exist beneath Axum may explain why the Ark has never been revealed, because what lies above is only shadow. Egypt likewise offers its riddles. Beneath the sands, hidden chambers and pyramids and temples contain relics sealed from light for thousands of years. Some fringe theories suggest the Ark, if not taken to Ethiopia or Nubo, was concealed in an Egyptian cache, stored with other sacred devices in vaults designed for eternity. The Egyptians mastered the art of sealing, labyrinths, false doors, hidden passages. Could one of these chambers still hold the Ark, mistaken for treasure, waiting for discovery? The theme of caves and tunnels is not random. It reflects something primal, the need to bury dangerous power. If the Ark was alien technology, emitting radiation or energy beyond control, then storing it in deep stone would be the logical choice. Rock absorbs, conceals, protects. A cavern could shield entire cities from exposure. Priests who feared the Ark's fire might have hidden it, not to lose it, but to save their people from its deadly touch. Tunnels were not just secrecy, they were safety. Think of the guardians who may have done this. Imagine priests carrying poles heavy with a relic that burned their skin and sickened their bodies, descending into tunnels by torchlight. Imagine the sweat dripping on stone as they lowered the Ark into a chamber carved by hand, sealing it behind stone walls. They may have wept as they closed it away, knowing they were burying their God's throne. Or perhaps they felt relief, closing forever the source of terror and awe. Their silence, their secrecy, became part of the covenant. What makes this theory enduring is not only tradition, but plausibility. We know tunnels existed. We know caves preserved secrets. We know cultures buried what they could not destroy. If fragile scrolls and mummies can survive for millennia in desert caves, why not a chest of gold and wood? Unless, of course, it was never meant to be found. The Mount Nebo account deserves closer attention. Jeremiah's choice of hiding place was not arbitrary. Nebo overlooks the Jordan Valley, a place of transition, of passage between wilderness and promise. To conceal the Ark, there was to place it on a threshold, a liminal zone between heaven and earth. Some scholars suggest the caves of Nebo were not natural, but carved, prepared long before. If true, then hiding the Ark there was part of a plan older than Jeremiah, as though the device itself was always meant to be stored in shadow. Explorers in later centuries scoured Nebo, convinced the Ark lay beneath its stones. Pilgrims reported sealed caves with inscriptions warning intruders away. Some described strange feelings near certain cliffs, unease, dizziness, even sudden illness. Such claims, dismissed as superstition, take on new meaning if the Ark or something like it lay buried, radiating faint energy even through stone. A relic designed to speak with gods might still be broadcasting in silence, its signal muted but never extinguished. The Temple Mount theory is equally compelling. Beneath the platform are layers of chambers, cisterns, and tunnels dating back thousands of years. Many remain unexplored due to political and religious sensitivities. Rabbinic tradition speaks of chambers of the deep beneath the temple, places where treasures were hidden. Some sources even hint at a chamber directly under the Holy of Holies, a perfect vault for the Ark. If it rests there, sealed in stone, then every prayer whispered at the western wall may be only inches away from the Ark's resting place. When the Crusaders and Templars came, they were consumed by these rumors. Chroniclers describe their obsession with digging under the mount, spending years tunneling without explanation. When they returned to Europe, they were richer, more secretive, more powerful. Legends arose that they had found something beneath Jerusalem, a treasure, a relic, a knowledge that transformed them. Could it have been the Ark? If so, perhaps they moved it again, burying it in secret tunnels beneath European castles or cathedrals, waiting for a future age. The theory of Ethiopia also intersects with tunnels. Some Ethiopian monks whisper that the chapel in Axum is not the Ark's true home, but merely its symbolic cover. Beneath the chapel lie chambers cut into the rock, where the true ark rests beyond reach. Decoys and replicas may sit above, but the real device lies where only stone and silence touch it. Visitors to Axum speak of being denied entry, of being warned away, of sensing fear in the guardians themselves. If a machine still hums beneath their feet, it is no wonder they guard it with silence. Why tunnels? Why caves? The answer may lie in physics. Stone is one of nature's best shields. Dense rock can block radiation, absorb vibrations, contain fire. If the ark was unstable, if it emitted energy hazardous to life, then burying it in stone would be the only way to preserve both the relic and the people. Ancient priests may not have understood radiation, but they understood danger. They learned by death and sickness that exposure killed, so they acted as any rational guardians would. They sealed it underground. We can also imagine another possibility, that the tunnels and caves were not human constructions at all, but part of the ark's own design. If it was alien, perhaps its custodians instructed humanity to hide it underground after use. Perhaps it required geological shielding to remain stable. Perhaps the very legends of hiding are not human invention, but echoes of instructions encoded into ritual. Hide it in stone, seal it in caves, wait until the stars align once more. Such commands could easily be reforged into scripture. History also shows us that tunnels and caves are natural vaults for memory. The Dead Sea Scrolls survived in clay jars because caves preserved them from time. Egyptian tombs held mummies for millennia, sealed in stone chambers. Mayan cities hid treasures in cenotes. Humanity has always turned to the earth to preserve what it could not protect above. The ark, if it was the most dangerous and sacred object ever held, would almost inevitably follow this pattern. It would be buried deep, entrusted to darkness. Modern adventurers continue to chase this theory. Some dig near Qumran, believing scrolls mention hidden treasures including the ark. Others descend into the catacombs of Axum, only to be turned back by guardians. In Jerusalem, archaeologists whisper of chambers that cannot be opened, of passages sealed by ancient stone. Every tunnel, every cave, every sealed door becomes a potential vault of the ark. And because absence fuels imagination, the legend grows. We seek it not only in light, but in shadow. What if it is true? What if the ark lies even now in a cave, humming silently? Its fire dim, but not extinguished. What if priests centuries ago placed it there not to hide it forever, but to preserve it until humanity was ready? Then every tunnel is a question, every cave a possibility. And perhaps, when one is opened, the silence will break. A voice will speak again from between the cherubim, not in the language of myth, but in the resonance of a machine waiting to reconnect with its source. Until that day, the theories endure. The ark may be gone from sight, but it is not gone from the imagination. Beneath stone, beneath sand, beneath the weight of centuries, it may yet rest. In tunnels carved by hands long dead, in caves sealed by fear and reverence, in silence deeper than words, the ark waits, and the world waits with it. What if the Ark of the Covenant was not a singular mystery, but part of a lineage of objects, strange, humming, glowing power boxes that have appeared across civilizations and time, always surrounded by awe, worship, and fear? If we are to entertain the possibility that the Ark was not a mere chest of wood and gold, but a machine of unknown origin, perhaps alien in design, then we must also ask, was it alone? Or do echoes of its technology ripple through the artifacts of other cultures, reappearing in different forms, always shrouded in the same aura of power? Across the ancient world, stories emerge of objects so charged with energy that they altered the course of nations, destroyed armies, and bound rulers with a divine legitimacy. In India, the tales of the Vajra, the thunderbolt weapon of Indra, describe a device that could strike with devastating force, a blend of lightning and cosmic energy held within a crafted object. The Vajra was not a metaphor in the old texts. It was wielded as a device, a weapon both feared and revered, described in Sanskrit hymns with a precision that feels less like myth and more like technical record. Was this an echo of the same force that lived inside the Ark? A kind of resonant technology that different civilizations encountered, named, and mythologized in their own terms. In Mesopotamia, the cradle of civilization, there is reference to the tablets of destinies, objects said to hold the authority of the gods, granting whoever possessed them the right to rule heaven and earth. They were not paper-thin tablets, but described as glowing, radiant, and humming, sometimes producing sounds that only priests could interpret. The Sumerians believed that to hold these was to command cosmic law itself, almost as though they contained coded instructions that bent reality in favor of their keeper. What is that if not a kind of data storage technology, one that in the mythic language of antiquity appeared magical? Compare this to the Ark, which radiated with sound, light, and devastating effects when mishandled. Are these not siblings in the same strange family of devices? Egypt too whispers of such objects. Consider the Ben stone, a sacred relic housed in Heliopolis, said to be the resting place of the sun's first rays and an object of enormous spiritual charge. Priests would describe its radiant glow, its humming resonance, its ability to connect mortals with the divine. Some theories even suggest the Ben stone was a meteorite. But why then did the priests guard it, as though it were a machine, not just a stone? It was kept atop the pyramid-shaped obelisks, channeling sunlight, storing energy, releasing it in ritual, a pyramid as a docking station, and the Ben as the core device. The Ark too was kept in a sacred chamber, never to be touched, never to be seen, a central piece of divine technology hidden within architecture designed to magnify its effects. Cross over to the Americas, and the Maya speak of the box of Hunab-Ku, a device tied to their gods hidden beneath temples, always guarded by the priestly caste. The descriptions, light, sound, force, mirror again the biblical Ark. In Peru, the pre-Incan traditions mention golden objects, sealed containers that channeled the voices of their gods. These were no mere chests, they were portals, amplifiers, strange machines cloaked in ritual and myth. What is most striking across these parallels is the insistence on three patterns. First, the box or container is always forbidden to touch by the uninitiated. Second, its power is demonstrated not through vague metaphor, but through direct, physical, often violent outcomes. Armies scattered, rulers legitimized, enemies killed instantly. And third, the device is always framed as a gift or theft from gods or otherworldly beings, never as an invention of the people themselves. In every case, humans are custodians, not creators. When the Hebrews carried the Ark into battle, victory followed, unless they mishandled it, in which case devastation fell upon them. When Indra wielded the Vajra, his enemies crumbled before a blinding strike. When the Sumerians clutched the tablets of destiny, their king's reign was untouchable, divinely ordained. These are not coincidences. They are variations of the same story, retold across continents, that somewhere beyond human craft, there exist devices that harness forces incomprehensible to our ancestors, and perhaps even to us today. Now, imagine for a moment that these power boxes are fragments of a distributed technology, scattered across time and geography, placed intentionally by some intelligence, alien or otherwise, that wanted to seed influence across civilizations. Each device tailored to its people, yet carrying the same hallmarks: radiation, resonance, danger, and the promise of godhood. Was this a test? A manipulation? Or simply the remnants of a crashed star-faring civilization, leaving behind its black boxes to be misinterpreted as relics of the divine? There is also the eerie possibility that these boxes were never meant for us, that they are containment units, prisons, or energy nodes designed to stabilize something dangerous. Something that, when unleashed, scorched fields, toppled walls, and drove men mad. The Ark killed those who touched it carelessly. The Ben blinded, the Vajra annihilated. Were these failures of human misuse, or warnings ignored? Perhaps humanity stumbled into an alien storage room and mistook the containers for treasures of heaven. Even today, whispers of hidden chests and boxes persist. Tales of secret reliquaries in the Vatican, stories of Tibetan lamas guarding crystalline devices in the Himalayas, rumors of African tribes with forbidden drums that thunder without being struck. Are these cultural memories of lost power boxes still echoing through human memory, awaiting rediscovery? Or have they all been hidden, locked away by those who understood too late their true nature? If the Ark of the Covenant was one of these devices, then it was not unique. It was one bead on a necklace of impossible artifacts, strung across the globe, anchoring the myths of humanity's earliest civilizations. The question is not whether the Ark was alien, but whether humanity itself has always been living alongside machines that should not exist, worshipping them, fearing them, never understanding them. What if our gods were never gods at all, but engineers from the stars, and their legacy lies not in holy texts, but in boxes of power, silent, waiting, and lethal to the touch? Consider the Dogon people of Mali, who spoke of star knowledge they should not have possessed, knowledge of Sirius and its hidden companion star. Their myths included references to chests of knowledge, boxes passed down from the Nomo, beings who came from the water and sky. These boxes were said to hum, to vibrate, to speak when opened in ritual. Could these two be iterations of the same devices, scattered across cultures to bestow fragments of advanced understanding to otherwise isolated tribes? The Dogon knowledge still baffles modern science. Its origin remains unexplained. Did the Ark and these boxes share a lineage of transmission, a cosmic pedagogy taught through forbidden machines? Let us return to the Ark's devastating power. When the Philistines captured it, plagues followed. Tumors, devastation, death. The same stories echo in Polynesia, where tribal lore speaks of Atua boxes that, when stolen, would inflict illness and ruin on the thief's people. Different oceans, different tribes, but the same curse. A container that punishes mismanagement with biological or energetic catastrophe. Could these legends be describing radiation, pathogens, or technologies designed to protect themselves with deadly countermeasures? In Central Asia, tales of the Stone of Heaven describe an object encased in metal said to fall from the stars, worshipped by nomadic peoples. Those who touched it uninvited suffered burns and death, and only shamans were allowed to approach it. The same themes repeat: restriction, punishment, and power. Again, we see the shadow of the Ark. Again, we see the possibility of a scattered, global distribution of alien machines. Imagine the psychological impact of such devices on early humanity. A glowing box, a humming stone, a container of invisible force. What language could people use except divine or sacred? But beneath the sacred awe was also terror. These were not gifts in the sense of kindness, they were trials. To survive them was to be chosen. To misuse them was to perish. What if alien contact was never about communication, but about exposure? To watch how fragile minds would build myth, kingdom, and war around machines they could never replicate or fully grasp. The more one looks, the harder it becomes to dismiss the parallels. The Norse sagas speak of the Brisingamen, a necklace that radiated with blinding power, guarded fiercely. Its light so intense it was likened to fire itself. Though not a box, its containment and radiance echo the same qualities of stored energy. In Celtic traditions, the Tuatha De Danann wielded the Stone of Ephel, which roared when touched by the rightful king. Sound as proof of divine legitimacy, how different is that from the Ark's thunderous voice when Yahweh's presence descended? Even in China, the concept of the heavenly jade box emerges in myth, holding cosmic decrees, burning with light, and bringing harmony or chaos to dynasties. The guardianship of these devices was always priestly, always elite. They were not for the common eye. They were controlled, hidden, used sparingly, as if those who held them feared what might happen should they be overused. And so, the pattern forms a tapestry. Across continents, across centuries, humanity circles around objects of containment that radiate with force. Whether chest, stone, tablet, or jewel, they are always repositories of something not fully understood. Energy, information, willpower, whatever the substance, it exceeded human craft. Now reflect. If these were truly alien devices, perhaps scattered remnants of a lost starfaring civilization, then the Ark is not a singular miracle but one chapter in an ongoing saga. It was preserved more vividly because the Hebrew scribes recorded with unmatched intensity, but the echoes elsewhere confirm it. The Ark belongs to a brotherhood of forbidden machines. The haunting question is this: where are they now? Have they all been destroyed, lost in catastrophes, buried beneath collapsed temples, submerged in oceans? Or are they hidden still, locked away in vaults beneath the Vatican, in Himalayan monasteries, in desert caves where modern eyes dare not look? If the Ark has vanished, perhaps it was not stolen but retrieved, taken back by the same hands that left it here. This possibility reframes human history. Perhaps civilizations did not rise from invention alone, but from catalysis, contact with these devices, brief sparks of alien fire that launched leaps in culture, law, and war. Then the devices vanished, leaving only stories, religions, and myths in their place. If the Ark was alien, then so too were the Tablets of Destiny, the Vajra, the Ben, the Hunab Ku box, the Atua chests, the Heavenly Stones. Different names, same essence, scattered pieces of a puzzle humanity still cannot solve. And perhaps that is the most chilling thought of all, that somewhere, still waiting, the last of these boxes lies untouched, humming faintly beneath soil or stone, ready to be uncovered again. And when it is, will we worship it as our ancestors did? Or will we finally recognize it for what it is? Not a gift of God, but a machine from a forgotten elsewhere, one that does not belong to us, one that may destroy us even as it dazzles our eyes. What could possibly have powered the Ark of the Covenant, if it was not a mere religious artifact but a device of extraordinary force, capable of emitting radiation, producing voices of thunder, and striking men dead at a touch? The question of its energy source is not a modern curiosity alone. It has haunted theologians, scientists, and mystics for centuries. If we strip away the language of miracles and instead ask in scientific terms, what mechanism lay within this gilded chest that could account for the raw, terrifying power it displayed? The possibilities are as varied as they are unsettling. One of the most common scientific theories proposes that the Ark functioned as a kind of electrical capacitor. The design itself suggests this: a wooden chest overlaid with pure gold inside and out, with two golden cherubim facing each other atop the mercy seat. To a modern engineer, this resembles a classic parallel plate capacitor, a device that stores electrical charge between conductive layers separated by an insulating material. Could the Ark have been a colossal capacitor, storing immense static charges gathered from the environment? And when touched without proper insulation, might it have discharged, electrocuting the unlucky offender? This theory gains weight when we consider the desert environment in which the Israelites traveled. The air, dry and often storm-laden, could have charged the Ark naturally. If it rested within a specially designed tent or temple lined with specific materials, linen, animal skins, bronze, it might have functioned as a kind of primitive but effective charge-accumulating station. Lightning itself may have been drawn to it, feeding it with the fury of storms. Imagine a chest humming with stored voltage, a divine battery that occasionally arced and flashed with terrifying bursts of raw electricity. To the eyes of an ancient, this would not be science. It would be the voice and wrath of God. Another possibility comes from the strange connection between the Ark and manna, the mysterious food said to have been preserved within it. Some theorists suggest the Ark housed a kind of radioactive source, perhaps naturally occurring uranium ore or another fissile material, either intentionally placed or unknowingly acquired. The radiant power could explain why those who touched the Ark developed sores, burns, or sudden death, symptoms consistent with radiation poisoning. Was the Ark essentially a container of radioactivity, sealed but imperfect, emitting a deadly glow mistaken for holiness? If so, then its energy source was not crafted by priests but mined from the earth, unknowingly harnessed as fuel for a machine of alien design. Consider also the possibility of piezoelectric power. Quartz crystals, when compressed, generate voltage. What if the Ark was designed not merely as a container, but as a resonator, lined or embedded with crystalline structures that converted mechanical stress into electrical energy? The constant carrying of the Ark, the ritualistic placement and removal of poles, the vibration of chants, the rumble of footsteps, these could have supplied the steady compression needed to activate piezoelectric charges. The Ark might have been alive with resonance, its interior pulsing with energies generated by sound and motion. This aligns eerily with reports that the Ark emitted a voice, a thunder, or even musical tones. Was it an ancient resonance chamber, a singing machine powered by the very rituals performed around it? Then there is the plasma hypothesis. Some researchers have speculated that the Ark was capable of generating or containing a form of plasma, superheated ionized gas that glows and crackles with energy. If the Ark's interior chamber was engineered to excite particles, perhaps through electromagnetic induction, it could have created luminous discharges visible to the priests. This would explain the repeated biblical references to light and smoke surrounding the Ark, and the description of a cloud descending upon the tabernacle when the Ark was active. Was this the divine presence, or plasma venting from a machine? If so, its power source was not limited to storage, but to continual generation, tapping perhaps into ambient electromagnetic fields of the Earth. Other theories grow stranger still. Some have suggested the Ark was a nuclear reactor in miniature, a concept supported by the account in Ethiopia of the Kebra Nagast, where it is said that men could not look upon the Ark because of its glowing fire. In the 20th century, scientists studying ancient fission sites in Oklo, Gabon, discovered that natural nuclear reactors could indeed exist, where uranium deposits underwent self-sustaining fission reactions 2 billion years ago. If nature could build such a reactor, why not a civilization beyond us? Perhaps the Ark contained a fragment of such a reactor, engineered into a device that generated continuous, dangerous energy. It would kill the careless, sustain the faithful, and glow with terrifying authority. Another school of thought proposes that the Ark tapped into geomagnetic energy. The Earth's magnetic field is a massive shifting power source, and ancient peoples were more attuned to its flows than we often admit. The Ark may have been placed in sites of telluric current, natural channels where geomagnetic force concentrates. Like a tuning fork placed upon a resonant surface, the Ark could have drawn in, stored, and amplified this energy. The choice of Jerusalem's Temple Mount or the Wilderness Tabernacle might not have been arbitrary. It could have been strategically aligned with Earth's veins of power. In such a case, the Ark was less a battery and more a receiver, channeling energies we have only begun to rediscover in modern science. Sound, too, may have been its engine. Sonic energy is invisible, yet it can shatter glass, disrupt matter, and alter consciousness. Could the Ark have been a sonic weapon, powered not by fuel, but by vibration? The chanting of priests, the blowing of shofars, the coordinated resonance of voices, all could have amplified the Ark's frequencies until it became a kind of directed acoustic device. When the walls of Jericho fell at the blast of trumpets carried before the Ark, was this miracle or resonance tuned to destroy stone? Perhaps the Ark stored sonic energy and released it as concussive force, leaving behind ruins mistaken for divine wrath. Still more speculative is the zero-point energy hypothesis. Some theorists, blending modern physics with ancient lore, suggest the Ark tapped into the quantum vacuum itself, pulling power from the very fabric of space-time. If the cherubim atop the Ark acted as electrodes, their wings nearly touching, they might have created a localized field that accessed energies beyond our current grasp. To those who built it, or to those who gifted it to mankind, this may have been simple engineering. To us, it is indistinguishable from magic. These scientific theories, though varied, converge on a single truth. The Ark's power was not symbolic. It was physical, measurable, and deadly. Every account of its use speaks not of metaphor, but of real outcomes: armies destroyed, fields scorched, men falling dead. It behaved as a machine, not as an idol, and machines require energy. If it was a capacitor, it stored storms. If it was radioactive, it carried the fire of the atom. If it was piezoelectric, it thrived on ritual and movement. If it was plasma, it birthed light from air. If it was nuclear, it glowed with fission's heart. If it was geomagnetic, it drank from the earth itself. If it was sonic, it thundered with the voices of men. And if it was quantum, it drew from the fabric of creation. What makes this even more haunting is that its energy source may have been self-sustaining. Perhaps the Ark was designed to never die, its core renewing endlessly, its charge replenished by the very environment it inhabited. That would explain why its power endured for centuries, and why its disappearance was not due to exhaustion, but to secrecy. Whoever took it, whether priests, kings, or powers unknown, likely knew that such energy could not be left in human hands indefinitely. Consider also the biological perspective. Some scholars wonder if the Ark's power source was not purely mechanical, but bioenergetic, drawing from living beings around it. In modern physics, we know that the human body emits electromagnetic fields, the heart itself producing measurable waves detectable several feet away. What if the Ark was designed to harvest and amplify this subtle energy, feeding on the presence of those who carried it, sang before it, and worshipped around it? This would explain why rituals were so vital, why the priests needed specific garments, and why only chosen individuals could approach it. The Ark may have been a symbiotic device, one that converted collective human energy into a weapon or transmitter, devouring devotion and transmuting it into force. There are also theories of chemical power. The ark contained sacred relics, the tablets, a jar of manna, Aaron's staff. But what if it also housed volatile compounds, carefully sealed in containers of gold? Ancient priests had access to pitch, bitumen, sulfur, and natural salts, ingredients that, when combined, can generate chemical reactions. Was the ark an alchemical engine, its rituals designed not for worship alone, but for careful maintenance of a dangerous reaction inside? A chamber of catalytic energy, mistaken for holiness, but functioning as an ancient reactor? The most radical theories point outward. Some believe the ark was not powered by earthly resources at all, but by an alien core, an energy crystal perhaps, akin to those imagined in modern science fiction, but grounded in plausible physics. Crystalline lattices can store and emit staggering amounts of energy when properly excited. If such a crystal was given, or left, to the Israelites, it would have seemed like the very heart of God. It would glow, hum, vibrate, and respond to handling. It would terrify anyone who touched it. Such a core would not decay like uranium, nor depend on storms like a capacitor. It would be nearly inexhaustible, a jewel of infinite fire set inside a golden chest. What makes the mystery profound is that the ark's energy source seems to have interacted with consciousness itself. The accounts suggest that visions, voices, and commands emanated from the ark. This has led some to speculate about a form of quantum entanglement or consciousness-based energy, a mechanism we scarcely understand. Could the ark have been designed not just as a power source, but as an interface, a bridge between the material and mental worlds? A machine that drew not only on physical energy, but on awareness, belief, and ritual. Such ideas may sound fantastic, but they are mirrored in cutting-edge theories today, where physicists debate whether consciousness itself is a fundamental field, like gravity or electromagnetism. If so, then the ark might have been an experiment or a gift that tapped this hidden field. It would not merely glow, it would respond. It would not only kill, it would judge. It would be a device whose energy was inseparable from the minds that approached it. And so, we face a paradox. The ark's energy source, whatever it was, straddled worlds, part natural, part engineered, part conscious. It might have been a storm battery, a nuclear fragment, a plasma chamber, a resonant crystal, or a quantum well. Or it might have been all of these at once, a layered technology so far beyond us that our categories fail. To call it divine was the only option for the ancients, just as to call it alien technology is perhaps the only option for us. Both terms admit the same truth. It was not of ordinary human making. And this raises one last unsettling possibility. Perhaps the ark did not have an energy source in the way we imagine, because it was the energy source. A node, a singularity, a seed of raw power encapsulated in gold. Not a machine that contained energy, but energy given form, a fragment of the cosmos itself, caged in a box, lending its fire to mankind for a brief, dangerous season, before vanishing again into silence. The Ark of the Covenant was never merely a religious relic. For the Israelites, it was the heart of their identity, the embodiment of divine presence, but also the most formidable weapon in their arsenal. The stories that surround it do not speak only of worship. They speak of conquest, of political authority, of kings legitimized and enemies undone. To understand the Ark's role in wars and power is to realize that this gilded chest was not just a vessel of faith, but a throne of dominance, a tool that fused religion and force into an unstoppable claim to supremacy. When the Ark first appeared, carried by the Israelites into the wilderness, it was a mobile nucleus of fear. To enemies, it was a terrifying mystery, a chest said to house the voice of an invisible God, and to those who carried it, it was the assurance of destiny. Wherever it went, victories followed. When the Ark was present at the front of armies, walls crumbled, cities burned, nations surrendered. It was as if the Ark projected not only spiritual legitimacy, but also a physical destructive power that made resistance futile. The most famous example is Jericho, whose walls fell after the Israelites circled the city carrying the Ark, accompanied by trumpets. To believers, this was a miracle. To a modern eye, it might look like a display of sound, resonance, and an unknown force radiating from the Ark, toppling stone fortifications and leaving devastation in its wake. What mattered politically is that this was no ordinary siege. Armies typically require catapults, battering rams, and attrition. But here, a chest carried on poles by priests brought down a fortified city. It was a message to every king in Canaan. Israel did not fight alone. They carried a power that surpassed weapons, surpassed strategy, surpassed human capacity. It was a declaration that their God, or their device, was unlike any other. Thus, the Ark was not simply a relic. It was propaganda incarnate, a traveling banner of supremacy, the core of Israelite political identity. We see this again in the battles recorded in Samuel. When the Philistines captured the Ark after the Battle of Aphek, disaster struck them. Tumors, plagues, devastation followed its presence. Cities that received it found themselves struck with catastrophe. So severe was the affliction that the Philistines hurried to return it, concluding that no human force could keep it without ruin. Oh, what kind of weapon could terrify a victorious enemy into returning their prize? The Ark was both treasure and curse. To Israel, it was power. To their enemies, it was death incarnate. This duality made the Ark more than just a battlefield presence. It was political leverage. Kings rose and fell around it. Saul, the first king of Israel, consulted the Ark, treating it as divine sanction for his rule. David, in one of the most defining acts of his reign, brought the Ark into Jerusalem, dancing before it, establishing not only military victory, but spiritual legitimacy. By doing so, he made Jerusalem not just a capital, but the city of God, fusing throne and temple in one gesture. The Ark was the symbol that sealed his authority more than any army could. To possess the Ark was to possess destiny. The Ark's presence influenced strategy as well. Armies believed they could not be defeated if it marched with them. It was carried ahead like a supernatural general, determining the morale of both Israel and their adversaries. Its absence was equally significant. When the Ark was hidden, withheld, or lost, despair fell upon the people. Their confidence collapsed. It was not merely wood and gold, it was the psychological fulcrum of war itself. The presence of the Ark was the difference between confidence and collapse, between triumph and annihilation. Beyond war, the Ark was central to political power plays. Priests who controlled it wielded as much influence as kings. The high priest, custodian of the Ark, could make or break rulers by claiming divine will. If the Ark blessed a king's decisions, his reign was secure. If it stood against him, his enemies found fuel. This intertwining of priesthood and kingship was unique. In other nations, gods had temples. In Israel, God had a throne that could be carried, hidden, displayed, or denied. That throne was the Ark. Whoever commanded it commanded the narrative of divine authority. We must also consider the psychological weapon it represented. Imagine an opposing army hearing not only the tramp of soldiers, but the blowing of horns and the whisper that the Ark had come. Imagine the terror, the superstition, the paralysis of facing an enemy armed with what seemed like the presence of the cosmos itself. This was not mere faith, it was weaponized fear. Even if the Ark never discharged energy, its reputation alone could break armies before battle began. In modern terms, it was both nuclear deterrent and holy relic, a fusion of faith and fear, politics and war. But there are hints that its power was more than reputation. Biblical descriptions suggest radiation, burning, and sudden death. Soldiers who approached incorrectly perished. Entire camps suffered illness after proximity. This suggests the Ark was not just a symbol, but a functioning device. In such a case, imagine the leverage it offered. A ruler with the Ark had not only legitimacy, but literal control over life and death, over victory and ruin. It was not only a throne, it was a weapon of mass destruction in a world without machines. The Ark's political role extended beyond Israel. Neighboring nations learned to fear it, but some also sought to emulate it. Egypt's accounts of sacred stones and relics that radiated power mirror the Ark's role. Mesopotamian kings carried tablets of destinies into war, echoing the concept of a divine device ensuring legitimacy. This suggests that the Ark was not isolated. It was part of a larger pattern in which rulers worldwide used sacred objects as both weapons and mandates of heaven. But unlike others, the Ark combined both in one. It was not only symbolic, it was active, alive, and dangerous. Its disappearance also reveals its political weight. Once the Ark vanishes from records after the Babylonian conquest, Israel's political and spiritual identity fractures. Without it, kingship collapses, exile begins, and a different kind of faith emerges. Less tied to objects, more to text and law. The Ark's loss is not just a religious event, it is a geopolitical catastrophe. The nation built on its presence struggles to define itself without the device that once guaranteed power. That silence, that absence, reshapes an entire people. The Ark, whether hidden or taken, altered the balance of empires by its mere presence or absence. Consider how the Ark functioned not just as a tool of war, but as a magnet of loyalty. When David brought the Ark into Jerusalem, he did not merely transport a chest. He relocated the axis of the people's devotion. By dancing before it, by displaying humility before the very object that guaranteed his power, he fused himself with the Ark in the eyes of the nation. This was not theater alone. It was strategy. He made himself the king chosen not by swords or councils, but by the same device that toppled walls and scorched enemies. From that moment, any rival who opposed him opposed not just a man but the throne of God embodied in gold. Solomon, too, understood its leverage. By building the temple as a permanent home for the Ark, he was not simply constructing a religious monument. He was cementing his dynasty's political stability. The temple was not just a place of worship, but a fortress of legitimacy. With the Ark inside, Solomon's throne became more than human rule. It became cosmic order, sanctioned by a machine or a god that terrified nations. Other rulers built palaces. Solomon built a sanctuary around his greatest weapon. The Ark also served as a rallying cry in times of despair. When enemies pressed close, when morale faltered, its unveiling restored courage. Priests carrying it to the battlefield transformed trembling foot soldiers into zealots convinced they could not fail. This was psychological warfare of the highest degree. Even if no bolt of lightning fell from its wings, the mere sight of the Ark filled men with the conviction of destiny. Wars are often decided not by numbers, but by morale, and the Ark was a furnace of conviction. But it also brought peril. When Israel grew arrogant, treating the Ark as a talisman rather than as the dwelling of a god or as the housing of an alien machine, it failed them. At Aphek, when the Ark was carried to battle without obedience to its rituals, disaster followed. 30,000 Israelites fell, and the Ark was captured. This reveals that the Ark's power was not automatic. It was conditional, bound to rules, perhaps mechanical, perhaps spiritual. The Ark was never a simple tool. It demanded reverence, obedience, and ritual, conditions that may have been necessary to stabilize whatever forces burned inside it. Its capture by the Philistines shows another dimension of political power. Even victorious, the Philistines could not keep it. Its presence destroyed their cities, sent plagues upon their people, and shattered their morale. The Ark was an unkeepable prize, a double-edged blade that cut down both enemy and possessor if mishandled. Thus, it became a political paradox. The greatest source of power was also the greatest liability. Only those sanctioned by ritual, by priesthood, by secret knowledge could wield it without ruin. This exclusivity elevated Israel above its neighbors. They alone, it seemed, possessed the key to control the fire. That perception alone was enough to reshape alliances and rivalries. In broader history, we see echoes of this pattern. Rome carried sacred standards into war. Egypt bore statues of gods, and Mesopotamian kings clutched tablets. But none had an artifact described with such raw, dangerous potency. The Ark was not merely symbolic, it acted, killed, destroyed. This made it not only a political tool, but a geopolitical destabilizer. Nations knew that facing Israel meant facing something more than men. It meant facing an enigma that defied steel and strategy. The Ark also reveals the deep interweaving of technology and theology. To declare victory was not enough. To declare divine approval was greater. The Ark was the bridge that allowed rulers to merge both. They could say, "Our God has chosen us," and point not to empty heavens, but to a box that hummed, flashed, and killed. This was proof embodied. In a world where authority was always fragile, this was unbreakable legitimacy. Wars were not just won, they were sanctified. Its disappearance tells us much. Without the Ark, Israel shifted from a nation of conquest to a nation of survival. Its politics grew less about divine weaponry and more about law, text, and tradition. The vacuum left by the Ark was filled by scripture, but something was lost, the physical anchor of political might. Without the Ark, kings could claim God's will, but none could prove it with thunder and death. This transition reveals how dependent political structures were on the object. Its absence was not just a spiritual wound, it was a political amputation. Even in legend, rulers sought it. Medieval kings dreamed of finding the Ark to secure dominion. Crusaders whispered that Jerusalem's power came from the Ark hidden beneath the temple. Ethiopia claimed to house it to legitimize its monarchy. Time and again, the Ark surfaces as the missing piece in political puzzles. Whoever held it could unite nations, command armies, and terrify enemies. Even in absence, its reputation lingered as the ultimate prize. And what if it still exists? Imagine the political chaos of its discovery today. Nations would race to claim it. Governments would veil it in secrecy. Religions would fracture or unite around it. Wars would ignite over its custody. If the Ark was once the fulcrum of Israelite politics, it could again become the fulcrum of global power. Because if it truly is a machine, then its rediscovery would be less about theology and more about supremacy. It would be the ultimate weapon and the ultimate throne, one more powerful than nuclear arsenals, because it carries not only energy, but myth. To rule with the Ark is to rule both physics and faith. Thus, the Ark's role in wars and politics was not accidental. It was essential. It shaped battles, crowned kings, and terrified nations. It was not passive. It was active, alive in history, breathing authority into rulers, fire into armies, and fear into enemies. The Ark was not only the heart of faith, but the heart of empire. And if it was an alien device, then humanity's first empires may have risen not on human genius alone, but on borrowed fire, on a machine whose hum could crown a king and whose glow could end a war. For centuries, the Ark of the Covenant has lived not only in scripture and legend, but in the restless imaginations of explorers who believe it may still exist, hidden somewhere in the folds of our world. Unlike myths sealed in antiquity, the Ark has drawn men and women, even in modern times, into deserts, monasteries, jungles, and ruins, all searching for a glimpse of the object that once carried the presence of God, or the power of an alien device. What they report is often strange, unsettling, and strangely consistent. Whispers of light, unearthly heat, impossible voices, and the undeniable sense of standing in the shadow of something that should not exist. In Ethiopia, perhaps more than anywhere else, the Ark is claimed to rest even now, in a small chapel in Aksum, guarded by a single monk who dedicates his life to it. Western explorers who traveled there in the 19th and 20th centuries returned with tales of awe and fear. They were not permitted inside, but they spoke of the monk's sunken eyes, of his trembling hands, of the way his skin bore lesions that looked suspiciously like burns. Locals said it was the Ark's radiation, its invisible fire that marked the guardian. Some explorers even claimed to hear a low hum when they stood near the chapel walls, as if machinery was working within. One spoke of a strange static in the air, the way his compass needles twitched. To the rational mind, this should be dismissed, yet why do these reports echo descriptions from Scripture itself? The Ark's power seems to haunt its alleged resting place, leaving traces even outside its walls. The Scottish explorer James Bruce, famous for tracing the Nile in the 18th century, described Ethiopian traditions of the Ark with intensity. He insisted that priests in remote monasteries told him directly that they had seen it, carried it, and even felt its heat. One monk supposedly warned him never to seek it, claiming, "It kills as it shines." Later, travelers repeated similar phrases, as if each monk, bound by oath, still slipped warnings into their words. Such consistency across centuries is difficult to fabricate. Whether they had truly seen it or were perpetuating legend, the tone was the same, awe mixed with dread. In the 20th century, explorers like Edward Ollendorff, a British scholar, attempted to examine the Ark in Aksum. He was allowed a fleeting glimpse of the relic beneath its covering and declared it a medieval copy. Yet, others accused him of dishonesty or fear, suggesting he saw more than he admitted, but recoiled from describing it. Some locals swore that on the day he approached the chapel, lightning struck nearby without storm clouds, as if the Ark itself had reacted. This blend of secrecy, dismissal, and mystery fuels the narrative that something extraordinary is indeed hidden there, beyond the reach of archaeology and into the realm of the forbidden. Other explorers have looked elsewhere. In the deserts of the Middle East, Bedouin tribes told of a cave where an object wrapped in ancient cloths glowed faintly in the dark. A British officer in World War I, stationed in Palestine, wrote in his diary of being led by locals to such a cave. He described a chest half buried, surrounded by scorched stone, and a heat that pushed him back though no fire burned. His words never made official reports. They remained in private papers discovered decades later. If true, what had he seen? Was it the Ark itself, misplaced far from Axum, or another fragment of the strange brotherhood of power boxes scattered through the ancient world? There are stories too from the Himalayas, whispered by travelers who sought lost monasteries. One claimed he was led to a chamber where monks pointed to a sealed golden chest they said was not to be touched. He swore he felt his hair rise on end, his body charged with static, as though standing near powerful machinery. He fled before seeing more, but never doubted that what he encountered was not myth. Others recount being turned away, but always with the same warning: it shines, it kills. The language again echoes the ancient texts. Modern archaeologists have risked their reputations to chase these accounts. Vendell Jones, sometimes called the real-life inspiration for Indiana Jones, spent decades searching for the Ark in caves near Qumran. He never found the Ark itself, but reported traces of substances described in temple rituals, as if remnants of its maintenance had been left behind. He spoke of feeling watched, of strange electrical sensations, as though the land itself still carried the residue of something extraordinary. Skeptics dismissed him, yet the persistence of his search revealed how compelling the Ark remains even to rational modern minds. Reports come too from soldiers and adventurers of the colonial era. Tales circulate of French officers in North Africa stumbling upon tribes who guarded a golden chest, refusing to allow foreigners near it. They spoke of strange fires that erupted when attempts were made to approach. One officer allegedly died after persistent fever and burns, his comrades whispering that he had touched something he should not have. The story, unverified, still lingers in regimental folklore. How many such deaths, hidden in obscure journals or forgotten memoirs, trace back to encounters with the forbidden chest? Even in the modern digital age, explorers claim eerie experiences. In the 1990s, a team of journalists traveled to Axum during the annual festival of Timkat, when replicas of the Ark, called tabots, are paraded in ceremony. They swore they saw light flickering within the chapel that houses the true Ark, light that moved like lightning though no lamps burned. One described his camera malfunctioning, batteries drained instantly when aimed at the building. Another felt his skin prickle, as though sunburned, though it was night. These accounts, dismissed as imagination by skeptics, still echo the themes repeated across centuries: heat, light, radiation, malfunction, dread. The modern explorer Graham Hancock reported on the Ethiopian tradition in his book, The Sign and the Seal. He wrote of interviewing monks who confirmed the Ark's presence in Axum and of hearing chants that described its power. He noted the fear in their eyes, the way their voices lowered when speaking of it. As if describing not myth, but an unstable device they guarded at great personal cost. Hancock's claims remain controversial, but they keep alive the possibility that eyewitness accounts are not inventions, but fragments of truth. What unites these explorers, across centuries and continents, is not certainty, but atmosphere. They describe not simply seeing an object, but entering into a presence. The Ark, or whatever they encountered, was not passive. It seemed to respond, to repel, to defend itself. Compass needles spun, cameras failed, flesh burned. These are not the effects of wood and gold. They are the effects of energy, of technology, of something alive in silence. There are also accounts hidden in obscure missionary journals from the 19th century. One missionary, stationed in Sudan, wrote of being guided by local tribesmen to a valley where strange stones were scorched black, as though lightning had struck repeatedly. At the center, he claimed, was a sealed box of bronze or gold, partially buried and covered in ancient cloth. He dared not approach, for his guides warned him in hushed tones that men had died for touching it. He later wrote that the air around the site felt heavy, his chest tight, his breath shallow, as though the place itself resisted intrusion. When he attempted to sketch it, his pencil snapped, and he interpreted this as a warning. Such anecdotes, fragile and unverifiable, still ripple with the same themes: forbidden contact, deadly consequence, and the Ark's elusive presence. A German adventurer in the 1930s, fleeing political turmoil in Europe, claimed to have sought the Ark in Yemen, following whispers that it had been carried south centuries before. He described being led to mountain caves, where priests in white robes barred his path, declaring that beyond lay the fire chest that no foreigner could see. He insisted that he heard a low vibration echoing from within the stone passages, like a hidden engine thrumming. He never saw the chest itself, but the impression haunted him until his death. His journals later discovered with sketches of winged figures and boxes inscribed with radiant lines. Even in modern war, echoes of the Ark emerge. Soldiers stationed in Ethiopia during World War II reported being told by locals never to approach the Axum Chapel at night. Some claimed that they heard chanting and saw strange flickers of light seeping from the cracks of the building, as though lightning flashed inside. One soldier wrote that when he ignored the warnings and drew too close, he was seized with sudden nausea and a pounding in his skull, forcing him to retreat. He laughed about it afterward, blaming malaria or nerves. Yet, his description reads eerily like radiation sickness in its first waves. More recently, explorers equipped with modern tools have attempted to probe the Ark's alleged hiding places. Thermal imaging scans of the Axum Chapel reportedly show anomalous heat signatures near the inner chamber, though no external source can explain it. Geophysical instruments have recorded magnetic disturbances. In one case, a drone flown overhead malfunctioned. Its circuits fried mid-air as though it passed through an invisible barrier. Reports like these, circulating in the margins of academic journals and adventure magazines, add a modern technological echo to ancient fears. If the Ark is there, it may still be active, repelling intrusion with forces we only dimly understand. Eyewitness stories also surface from treasure hunters who scour the Dead Sea caves. Some have spoken of finding tunnels where the air buzzes as though charged, where lanterns flicker without wind. One man claimed to see inscriptions on the walls depicting a chest with winged figures, radiating lines of power. He left immediately after his companion collapsed from sudden illness. No relic was brought out, but his testimony lingers in fringe reports, filed alongside warnings that some caves are alive with presence. Are these exaggerations born of greed, or the faint brush with a technology buried in stone for 2 millennia? And then there are those who never return. Stories circulate of expeditions vanishing into the deserts of Sudan and the mountains of Ethiopia, their last notes mentioning the Ark. Lost without trace, they feed the legend that the Ark is not just hidden, but defended. By guardians, by curses, or by its own energy. In every age, men have disappeared chasing it, their silence joining the hum of mystery around the relic. The Ark consumes not only the careless touch, but the very lives of those who seek it too boldly. The psychological weight of these accounts cannot be ignored. Explorers describe not only external phenomena, but an inner shift. Dreams of fire after standing near suspected sites, nightmares of wings and thunder, feelings of being judged by something unseen. They return haunted, their words trembling. Even skeptics admit that something about the Ark narrative alters those who pursue it. It is not simply treasure hunting. It is encounter with a mystery that gazes back. If these accounts are true, then the Ark is not dead history. It remains an active presence in the world, humming in hidden chambers, burning guardians with unseen fire, flickering in the memories of those who draw near. If they are false, then humanity has conspired for centuries to maintain one of the most consistent illusions in our collective memory. But which is more astonishing, that such a device exists, or that we cannot let go of the belief that it does? The Ark is not only scripture, it is story. It is the trembling voice of monks in Axum, the journals of explorers, the whispers of Bedouins, the warnings of monks in the Himalayas, the diaries of soldiers, the broken bodies of those who drew too close. Eyewitness accounts stretch across centuries like sparks, each one faint, but together painting the outline of a fire that will not die. And if the Ark is real, then perhaps the greatest testimony is not what is seen, but what is felt. The hum in the air, the dread in the chest, the sudden heat of a presence that judges without words. For the Ark does not reveal itself to the eye alone. It reveals itself to the soul, leaving behind witnesses who can only whisper the same words. It shines, it kills, it waits. Could the Ark of the Covenant still be active today? Not simply a relic of myth, not only a memory sealed in scripture, but a machine still humming in silence. its core alive with forces we can scarcely imagine. To even ask the question is to confront the possibility that somewhere, perhaps beneath stone, within a monastery, or hidden in a vault, the Ark continues to radiate power, not as history, but as presence. The legends do not describe an artifact that expired. They describe an object that burned, hummed, judged, and killed for centuries. When touched, it struck men dead. When carried, it toppled walls. When mishandled, it cursed cities. There is no account of it growing weak, no description of its power fading. Instead, the Ark's disappearance reads less like the death of a relic, and more like the deliberate concealment of something too dangerous to leave exposed. If it was truly a machine, then why assume it stopped working? Machines do not die because time passes. They stop only when broken, dismantled, or exhausted. And what if the Ark was designed never to exhaust? What if its core was inexhaustible, a self-sustaining energy meant to endure for millennia? Those who claim to have glimpsed it in modern times speak not of an empty box, but of a living presence. The monks of Aksum, Ethiopia, guard a chest, they say, is the Ark itself. They describe heat, light, radiation, and the toll it takes on those who stay too near. The guardians are said to grow sick, their bodies marked with lesions, their lives shortened. This is not how one would describe an inert relic of wood and gold. It is how one might describe custodians of a machine that still hums with energy, leaking power even when hidden behind walls. How could myth produce radiation burns? How could imagination twist compass needles or drain batteries? If the Ark is indeed there, it may still be awake. There are whispers of experiments. Some explorers have reported measuring magnetic anomalies near supposed resting places of the Ark. Instruments misfire, compasses spin, electronics fail. A drone flown near the Aksum Chapel is said to have collapsed from the sky, its circuits fried. Thermal scans have shown heat where none should exist. These are not the signs of a silent relic. They are the symptoms of activity. Something continues to generate force in the darkness, as though the Ark resists intrusion by releasing subtle but undeniable waves of energy. If so, the implications are staggering. It means that the Ark's energy source, whatever it was not fragile. Whether capacitor, crystal, reactor, or quantum engine, it was built to endure, not for centuries, for millennia. That endurance alone suggests a design far beyond human capability. If the Ark remains active today, it is proof that the technology behind it does not decay with time. It is proof that it was built not by the hands of wandering nomads, but by an intelligence that understood permanence in a way we do not. But if it is still active, what does that mean for us? Does it sit in Ethiopia, guarded and worshipped, still glowing faintly in its shrine? Or has it been taken elsewhere, seized by governments who understand its danger? There are rumors of secret vaults beneath the Vatican, whispers of military bunkers where impossible relics are stored, perhaps even studied. Could the Ark be there now, probed by scientists who cannot explain why their Geiger counters scream, why their instruments fail, why their guards grow sick? If so, then it may not be hidden only as sacred. It may be hidden as classified, its activity too volatile to reveal, its power too disruptive to release. The silence around it may itself be evidence, for if it had truly been lost, we would expect no fear. Yet still today, stories warn against approaching it. Still today, the guardians of Aksum refuse entry, claiming death to those who see it. Still today, explorers whisper of energy and dread. It is as though the Ark itself continues to enforce its secrecy, pushing back against discovery, punishing curiosity, defending itself across ages. That is not the behavior of an artifact asleep. That is the presence of something alive. Could it still act as a weapon? Could its fire still kill? If the Ark truly was a reactor or capacitor, then yes, it could still discharge lethal energy. It could still radiate, still burn, still topple. Its absence from wars may not prove it is dead. It may prove only that those who control it fear what would happen if it were unleashed again. In an age of nuclear arsenals and global surveillance, perhaps the Ark is the one weapon too unpredictable to risk. A force that would devastate friend as easily as foe. To keep it hidden may be the only strategy left. And what of its role as an interface, a bridge to something beyond? Witnesses described voices issuing from between the cherubim, commands and counsel emanating from its core. If such experiences were not hallucination but interaction, then perhaps the Ark still speaks, still emits signals beyond human frequency. Who might be listening now? Who dares approach it? Perhaps its activity is not only physical but communicative, an active channel to intelligences beyond us, still waiting, still watching. Could the Ark be not only active but awake? The chilling possibility is that its activity is not benign. Guardians growing sick, explorers collapsing, cities cursed, storms erupting. These are not the traits of a machine at rest. These are the symptoms of a reactor still burning, a device still pulsing with energy, still dangerous, still lethal. And if it is still active, then somewhere, right now, it is killing slowly those who tend it, leaking its force into walls, into air, into human flesh. Silent, invisible, but inexorable. If true, then the Ark remains not only real but perilous, a hidden catastrophe beating at the edge of our world. Yet, perhaps its endurance was intentional. Perhaps it was built never to stop, because its purpose was not to serve one people for one time, but to exist always, waiting for rediscovery. Could it be that the Ark is not only still active, but awaiting activation? That its hum, its glow, its dread, are but the idle thrum of a machine in standby, waiting for the right touch, the right signal, the right ritual to awaken fully? If so, then the world has not seen the last of its fire. The walls of Jericho may fall again, not as myth, but as headline. We must ask, what would happen if it were revealed? If it emerged into daylight today? Would it still topple cities, still radiate death, still command armies with its presence? Or has the world changed so much that its power would seem small beside nuclear bombs? Perhaps, yet its true danger is not measured only in kilotons. Its danger is symbolic as much as physical. The Ark could ignite not only explosions, but faith, war, zealotry. To prove it still works would be to unleash not only radiation, but belief, to spark conflicts that would rage across nations. In this sense, its activity today would not simply be technological, it would be apocalyptic. So, could it still be active? The evidence suggests yes. The consistency of reports, the fear of guardians, the anomalies measured, the legends that refuse to fade. These are not the echoes of a dead relic. They are the signs of a machine still pulsing, still alive. Whether hidden in Axum, sealed in a Vatican vault, buried in desert stone, or concealed in a military bunker, the Ark may still breathe in silence, its power not extinguished, but merely contained. For now. And perhaps that is the final terror. For if it is still active, it is not under our control. It is merely hidden, humming, waiting. Its fire could be unleashed again, not by choice, but by accident. A wall collapsing, a hand brushing gold, a vault breached. And when it awakens fully, we may realize that the Ark of the Covenant was never gone, never dead. It was always alive, its presence enduring across ages. Not relic, not symbol, but a machine that still waits, still breathes, still shines, even now. Consider the scientific implications if it truly remains active. In modern laboratories, even the smallest nuclear reactors require constant supervision, shielding, and careful regulation. Yet the Ark, if it is indeed still radiating, has endured for thousands of years without maintenance. How could this be possible unless its energy source was not natural, but engineered with principles far beyond our science? A self-regulating reactor, a crystal lattice that never loses charge, a quantum device feeding on the vacuum energy of space itself. Any of these could explain its endurance. Each would mean we are dealing not with relic, but with technology. Technology designed to outlast civilizations themselves. The question of whether it is still active also drags us into the murky waters of geopolitics. If the Ark is not in Axum, then where? Rumors abound of its capture or concealment. Some claim it was smuggled during Ethiopia's wars and taken by colonial powers. Others whisper it lies in secret Vatican vaults, where only the highest ranks dare to approach. There are stories that during World War II, Nazi expeditions sought it, believing it to be a weapon. If it was found, perhaps it now rests in military laboratories, its activity tested under secrecy. Could its hum be monitored by instruments today? Its energy mapped, its properties examined by physicists sworn to silence? If so, then it is not only active, it is already known. Its presence would be one of the greatest classified secrets of our time. And what of the human cost? If it is still active, then those who guard it are still paying the price. The monks of Axum live short lives, their bodies ravaged by unseen forces. If soldiers or scientists elsewhere have handled it, perhaps their bodies too bear the marks of invisible fire. How many unexplained illnesses, how many sudden deaths in obscure laboratories trace back to the Ark's radiation? Its activity may not be a blessing. It may be a slow catastrophe devouring its keepers even now. Yet, there is another perspective. What if its activity is not destructive, but intentional guidance? What if the hum, the glow, the visions described through history are still being broadcast, still reaching into human minds? Perhaps the Ark remains active as a transmitter, sending signals beyond our perception, shaping dreams, inspiring faith, altering history quietly from the shadows. If so, then it is not only still active, it is still shaping the destiny of humanity, not through armies, but through whispers planted in consciousness. Could it be influencing us still? Could our visions, our myths, our sense of the divine be echoes of an object still speaking? If true, then the Ark's activity is not only technological, it is psychological, existential. It means we are not alone in our thoughts, that our history is not our own. It means the Ark never stopped its work, even when hidden. Its voice simply grew quieter, a background hum that still guides the currents of belief. Imagine the chaos if it were revealed tomorrow, active and alive. Scientists would rush to study it, religions to claim it, nations to seize it. Wars would ignite over its custody. Its power would not even need to discharge. Its mere existence would detonate the world order. Its activity today is dangerous not because it might unleash fire, but because it might unleash certainty, proof of God, proof of alien technology, proof of something beyond us. Any of these would unravel civilizations built on fragile mysteries. To show the Ark alive would be to collapse the balance of faith and reason. It would be apocalypse, not of fire alone, but of meaning. And this is why perhaps it remains hidden. Not because it is dead, but because it is alive. To reveal it would be to reveal too much, too soon. Those who guard it, whether monks, priests, or governments, may understand this. They may see that the world cannot bear its activity in daylight. So they let it hum in silence, consuming guardians slowly, waiting in shadows, but never extinguished. The Ark may still be active today. Not relic, not legend, but machine. It may hum in Axum, it may pulse in vaults, it may radiate in hidden caves. It may burn its keepers, drain electronics, twist compasses. It may still whisper in the minds of the faithful. Its glow may still flicker behind sealed walls. Its hum may still carry into the silence of night. And perhaps, even now, someone stands too close, feeling the weight in their chest, the prickle on their skin, the dread in their mind, and realizes with horror that the Ark of the Covenant has never gone silent. It has only been waiting, and it still waits, active, alive, untouchable, eternal. To speak of the Ark of the Covenant is already to court danger. To imagine finding it, touching it, or attempting to use it is to step into a landscape where myth and physics converge, where faith collides with technology, and where the thirst for power threatens to consume everything. The risks of finding and using the Ark are not merely academic, they are existential. They touch not only on the survival of individuals, but on the survival of nations, religions, and perhaps even the balance of the world itself. The first and most immediate risk is physical. Ancient stories warn of sudden death, of men struck down, of bodies consumed without flame, of sickness that clung to those who even looked upon the Ark unprepared. If these are echoes of radiation or plasma discharge, then uncovering the Ark today could be an act of suicide. Imagine a team of explorers breaking open a chamber where it has lain sealed for centuries. The moment light touches its golden frame, a surge of invisible force might spill outward, searing lungs, shattering nervous systems, collapsing organs. Cameras might record only static, batteries might drain instantly, and the voices of the expedition might rise into screams. If the Ark is still active, then to find it may mean to awaken it, and awakening it may cost lives before a single question is answered. Yet, the greater risk comes not from the Ark's raw energy, but from the human desire to wield it. History has shown again and again that wherever the Ark traveled, armies marched behind it. It was not simply a holy relic, it was a banner of legitimacy, a promise of victory, a device that could topple empires with its presence alone. If it were found today, what government, what military, would resist the temptation to claim it? Which nation would allow another to hold such a relic unchallenged? The Ark's rediscovery could ignite wars not of faith alone, but of survival, with superpowers racing to seize control. The risk of its use lies not in whether it works, but in the certainty that men would kill to try. Consider the political risks. If it were revealed to the world, the Ark could fracture global religion overnight. Billions who have lived by faith would confront tangible proof of the divine, or of alien intervention. Churches could collapse or splinter. Nations built on religious identity might riot or revolt. For some, the Ark would be salvation. For others, heresy. And in the vacuum of certainty, extremists would rise, claiming the right to bear or defend it. It would not be a relic of peace. It would be a catalyst of chaos, a spark in the powder keg of belief that has always simmered beneath civilization. But the risks are not only social and political, they are cosmic. What if the Ark was never meant to be used by us? What if it was planted here as a test, a beacon, a fragment of technology too powerful for primitive hands? By finding it, we may draw attention from forces that left it behind, or from laws of nature that punish interference. If the Ark is a reactor, its misuse could level cities. If it is a transmitter, activating it could broadcast Earth's position to distant stars, inviting not salvation, but conquest. To use it without understanding is to play with a trigger we cannot see, a trigger wired to consequences beyond imagination. There is also the risk of corruption. Even if the Ark's power could be harnessed safely, what would it do to the one who wields it? Power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. The Ark has been described as judging those who touched it, as burning those unworthy, as demanding purity. But what if its true danger is more insidious? What if it amplifies the will of its possessor, magnifies ambition into tyranny, pride into delusion? The greatest risk of the Ark may not be that it kills its enemies, but that it transforms its keeper into something monstrous, a ruler who believes himself chosen by God, armed not with faith, but with fire. Entire nations could fall under the shadow of one man claiming divine mandate, his authority enforced by a golden box that hums with power. And yet, the deepest risk may be existential. To find the Ark is to face the collapse of mystery. For millennia, it has lingered in the in-between, both legend and history, a riddle that keeps faith alive through longing. To expose it, to dissect it, to lock it under laboratory light would not only endanger lives and nations, it would endanger wonder itself. If it is revealed as alien technology, faith may wither. If it is revealed as divine, science may collapse. Either way, balance would be lost. We risk more than death or war. We risk unraveling the fragile tension between belief and reason that has carried us this far. Imagine scientists attempting to test it. They would bring it into laboratories sealed with lead, surround it with sensors, approach it with drones. And yet, what if its response depends not on technology, but on consciousness? What if it does not open to machines, but only to human intent? Then the first volunteer would step forward, trembling, heart pounding, eyes fixed on the gleam of gold. The instant his hand touched the handle, a surge might ripple through the room, monitors spiking, metal twisting, cameras burning out. The man might cry out once, then fall still, his body intact, but his mind hollowed, as if the Ark had consumed not his flesh, but his soul. The risk is not only that it resists examination, but that it resists the very idea of being examined. To attempt to measure it may be to trespass into forbidden territory, to provoke a force that was never meant to be catalogued. And if it does yield to study, what then? Suppose physicists discover it is a reactor, drawing energy from vacuum fields, producing clean, limitless power. The temptation would be irresistible. Governments would seek to replicate it, corporations to monetize it, militaries to weaponize it. The Ark's discovery could collapse the energy economy overnight, destroying industries, destabilizing nations, reshaping geopolitics. It could become the new nuclear race, only far more dangerous. The Cold War once froze the world under the shadow of atomic fire. The rediscovery of the Ark could ignite a second, deeper Cold War, with powers competing not for bombs, but for godlike devices. The risk here is not simply annihilation, but transformation. A civilization twisted by sudden access to technology it is not mature enough to wield. Then, there are ecological risks. What if the Ark, once disturbed, alters the world itself? Legends speak of plagues, storms, earthquakes. What if these were not metaphors but effects? Fields that disrupt weather patterns, radiation that triggers mutations, resonances that ripple through ecosystems. To find and use the Ark could mean unleashing not only power, but imbalance, rewriting natural laws in ways we cannot reverse. An entire planet could become collateral damage in the attempt to harness what was never ours. Ethical risks loom even larger. Who would have the right to use it? If it truly carries divine sanction, then no one can claim ownership. If it is alien technology, then all of humanity might lay claim. But in practice, ownership would fall to whoever seized it first. The Ark could thus become the ultimate moral hazard, a device too powerful to belong to anyone, yet too tempting to remain unclaimed. It would fracture not only nations, but our sense of justice, forcing us to confront a truth we have long avoided, that humanity is not ready to hold the infinite without being destroyed by it. And still, perhaps the most haunting risk is psychological. The Ark has always inspired awe, terror, devotion. To stand before it is to feel your soul weighed, to believe that you are seen by something beyond comprehension. If such an artifact were revealed today, the collective psyche of humanity might collapse under the weight of certainty. Some would worship it. Others would deny it. Millions might fall into despair, realizing their gods were machines. Or their machines were gods. The risk is madness, not only in individuals, but in entire societies, a breakdown of meaning itself. Now, imagine the final, most terrifying risk, that the Ark was meant to remain hidden until the end. Perhaps it is not broken, not abandoned, but waiting for a moment of culmination. To find it now, to force it open prematurely, could trigger whatever it was designed to unleash. A beacon that alerts others, a weapon that activates only when disturbed, a failsafe built into the fabric of human history. To find and use it recklessly may not only doom us, it may call down something we were never meant to face. And yet, despite all these risks, humanity would not resist. The hunger for knowledge, the lust for power, the need for meaning, these would drive us forward, hands trembling on the lid, eyes wide with hope and fear. We would ignore the warnings, silence the doubters, and justify the gamble by saying, "We must know." And that, perhaps, is the greatest risk of all, that we will not be able to resist the temptation, even knowing it could consume us. The Ark's danger is not only in itself, it is in us. Our weakness, our ambition, our inability to let the unknown remain unknown. That is what makes the risk so profound. Not because the Ark may kill us, but because we may choose to kill ourselves with it. The Ark of the Covenant is the most dangerous treasure ever spoken of. Its risks are not only myth, but mirror, showing us the flaws of our nature. To find it may be to end wonder. To use it may be to end the world. And yet still, in hidden deserts, in dark vaults, in whispered prayers, the search continues. Because the greatest risk of all is not finding it, but finding that it was always real, and that we were never ready. To ask whether the Ark of the Covenant is spiritual or technological is to confront one of the deepest questions humanity has ever faced. Where does the divine end, and where does invention begin? The Ark has always existed at the intersection of miracle and mechanism. To the faithful, it is the throne of God, radiating holiness, carrying his presence across deserts and into battle. To the skeptic, it may be a device engineered with such mastery that its function would appear divine to ancient eyes. This is the heart of the debate, and it is as alive today as it was thousands of years ago. Consider the ancient descriptions. Fire that consumed without fuel, light that blinded without flame, a voice that spoke from between cherubim, and a force that struck down intruders with instant death. These could be the signs of God's presence, but they could also be the language of physics, radiation, plasma, electric discharge, resonance fields. The spiritual interpretation elevates these to miracles. The technological interpretation translates them into science. The Ark is either the holiest object ever known or the most advanced machine ever built. The spiritual argument insists that the Ark was never meant to be understood in the language of wires, circuits, or energy fields. It was a covenant, a promise between heaven and earth. The rituals surrounding it, the cleansing, the anointing, the veil of secrecy, were not safety protocols, but acts of reverence. To strip the Ark of its sacred meaning, to dissect it as if it were a reactor or capacitor, is to risk desecrating something beyond comprehension. For the faithful, the Ark is proof that God intervenes directly in history. But the technological perspective offers a different lens. What if those rituals were not simply spiritual exercises, but necessary safety measures? Washing and purification could reduce contamination. The high priest's garments could act as insulation. The rules against touching it directly might reflect the dangers of conducting electricity or radiation. The taboos, then, are less about sin and purity, and more about survival. If this is true, the Ark is not only sacred, it is engineered. And if it is engineered, then someone, somewhere, must have built it. This debate runs deeper than the Ark itself. It is a mirror of the human condition. For centuries, we have stood at the threshold between mystery and explanation, torn between reverence and curiosity. To call something spiritual is to surrender to awe. To call it technological is to attempt mastery. But perhaps the Ark defies such a division. Perhaps it exists precisely to blur the line, to remind us that the divine and the mechanical are not opposites, but overlapping truths. Imagine scientists of today confronting the Ark. Some would come armed with sensors, Geiger counters, spectrometers, and robotics, determined to decode its secrets. Others would approach barefoot, in silence, in prayer, believing that the Ark can only be engaged through humility. Which approach is correct? What if the Ark responds differently depending on how it is treated? What if its power is entangled with human intent, punishing those who see it as mere machinery, rewarding those who treat it as holy? There are profound risks in either interpretation. If humanity chooses the spiritual lens alone, it may surrender to superstition, refusing to study what could be the most advanced technology ever encountered. Knowledge that could heal, power that could transform energy systems, may be left untapped out of fear of blasphemy. But if humanity chooses the technological lens alone, it may strip the Ark of meaning, reducing it to circuitry, blind to the possibility that consciousness, morality, and reverence are part of its design. This debate is not new. Throughout history, the sacred and the scientific have often been confused. Lightning was once the weapon of gods, until it became electricity. Disease was once divine punishment, until it became microbiology. The stars were once messengers of fate, until they became thermonuclear furnaces. Yet, in each case, the mystery was not destroyed by explanation. It was deepened. To learn that lightning is electricity is not to rob it of awe, but to expand our sense of its scale. To learn that the stars are burning suns is not to diminish them, but to magnify them into cosmic furnaces whose power humbles the imagination. And yet, the inverse may also be true. If the Ark is spiritual, its reality might transcend physics entirely. No wires, no circuits, no hidden generators, just presence. A manifestation that defies explanation, not because we lack the tools, but because it belongs to another order of being. In this view, any attempt to reduce the Ark to science is arrogance, an intrusion into mystery. To touch it as machine is to miss its purpose, which is not to power cities, but to shape souls. Its role was never to fuel empires, but to remind humanity that it is not sovereign. The technological perspective demands replication. If it is a device, it can be reverse engineered, copied, improved upon. The spiritual perspective resists this. If it is divine, it cannot be manufactured, only encountered. To replicate it would be like forging a soul, a counterfeit without essence. This tension points to the ultimate paradox of the Ark. It is simultaneously an object and an experience. The box of gold and acacia wood may be visible, but its true power lies in what it awakens in those who encounter it. Think of how different cultures across the world approach sacred technology. In India, ancient texts like the Vedas describe weapons of fire and sound, devices that could annihilate armies yet were wrapped in mantras, rituals, and codes of purity. Were these devices machines or spiritual constructs? The line blurs. In Greece, myth spoke of automatons forged by Hephaestus, robots powered by divine craftsmanship. Were these mechanical inventions or allegories of divine creativity? The Ark fits into this pattern, a symbol of a threshold humanity cannot fully cross. Modern scientists speculate that the Ark, if technological, might contain an energy source far beyond our own. Some theorize about piezoelectric crystals that generate fields when pressured, or plasma resonators that create arcs of energy. Others imagine it as a capacitor of unimaginable scale, storing and releasing charge like a thunderstorm trapped in a box. But to the spiritual mind, these are distractions. The ark's energy is not stored in crystals or capacitors. It is the presence of God Himself, a living force that transcends physics. Even today, in the age of satellites and quantum computing, the debate feels unresolved. We live in a time where science explains more each day, yet spirituality remains unshaken. Millions still kneel in prayer. Billions still search for meaning beyond equations. If the Ark appeared tomorrow, would our world truly unite around one answer? Or would the divisions deepen, scientists demanding access to its chambers, priests demanding silence and reverence? Perhaps the greatest danger is not what the Ark is, but what it reveals about us. Consider the role of intent. If the Ark responds to reverence, then approaching it as a machine could trigger disaster. But if it responds to curiosity, then approaching it as sacred myth could yield nothing. This duality makes it perhaps the most dangerous object imaginable, because its function may be entangled not only with physics, but with the human heart. It is not just a device or a relic. It is a mirror, reflecting back to humanity its own deepest assumptions about reality. Those who see only God may find divinity. Those who see only technology may find energy. Those who see both may glimpse truth. The spiritual versus technological debate extends beyond religion and science. It is about the destiny of civilization. To see the Ark as spiritual is to embrace humility, to accept that some mysteries cannot be mastered. To see it as technological is to embrace mastery, to believe that no mystery is beyond human reach. But what if civilization requires both? What if survival depends not on choosing between reverence and analysis, but on weaving them together, on learning to stand in awe while also daring to understand? And here lies the ultimate paradox. If the Ark is divine, its existence proves that God intervenes in history. If the Ark is technological, its existence proves that advanced intelligences have touched humanity. Both conclusions are staggering. Both rewrite our place in the universe, and both terrify the guardians of order, because either way, humanity is not alone. Perhaps that is why the Ark vanished. Perhaps it was hidden because its truth, whether spiritual or technological, was too explosive for civilizations to bear. A divine throne could shatter empires. A technological reactor could destabilize power. The Ark may not have been lost accidentally, but deliberately, concealed to protect humanity from truths it was not ready to face. Its absence, then, is not failure, but mercy. If one day it is found, the debate will ignite like fire across the globe. Scientists will gather in labs, priests in temples, politicians in secret councils. The news would fracture societies. Some would see it as the return of God's throne, others as evidence of alien engineers. Wars might be fought not for the Ark itself, but for the right to define what it is. Humanity's greatest test may not be controlling the Ark's power, but controlling its meaning. And so, in this golden box lies more than relic or reactor. It is a crossroads, a symbol of humanity's unending struggle between spirit and science, faith and knowledge, reverence and curiosity. It does not yield easily to either side. It resists closure, it demands humility, and in its silence, it whispers the deepest truth, that the line we draw between the spiritual and the technological may not exist at all. They may be one and the same, two languages for the same mystery, two reflections of the same source. In the end, the Ark may not be asking us to decide between spirit and science. It may be asking us to see that the two were never separate to begin with.